This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, or even contribute to the discussion in the episode itself, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Kia ora, and welcome.
Welcome to Goof on Air.
Goof on Air. We were just doing our little pre-record banter, which is recommended to get us both in sort of the mood to do a podcast. And Richard said we should start recording because I was being so goofy that he wanted to catch it on air. What was I saying, Richard? I was saying all sorts of goofy jokes.
Oh, you called me a predator. What else?
What did I just said, why'd they have to call it aliens? Why did they have to make it political? These are great all-timer gags that I did not get on mic.
Yeah, I mean, if only we still had our failed web series ready to record, maybe
we do still have it. I guess we still have it. It's just not doing anything.
Yeah, it failed. No one wanted it.
Welcome along, everybody, to film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast. This is a podcast where Richard and myself, AJ, we watch and discuss a different film franchise every fortnight, but this time, and for the next 3 episodes, not fortnights, but weeks, we're getting a big multi-part franchise series. It's one that I think has hung over our heads since the podcast conception.
Like a hangover.
Like a hangover, but it is not the hangover. It's a podcast. It's a franchise that feels like one of the last great mega franchises we've yet to cover on this show. Really.
Yeah. And we're covering it a little bit differently today because we actually
don't have a lot of
time
time
constraint.
Yeah, so there's, for reasons which maybe we'll go into later, or if you're in the Discord you might know about, Richard's actually flying down to Christchurch to see me tonight. And so we got to record this now for some reason over Zoom before he gets on his flight. That's not to say this episode will be any less quality, I think, especially because of the franchise
I think it'll be
itself.
More quality.
Yeah, and that franchise this week, of course, is the Alien franchise, which is part of the larger Alien vs. Predator mega franchise, which... Let's be honest, the Alien franchise very much wants to just be its own.
Yeah.
I don't think it wants to fraternize with Predator much these days.
Well, none of us want to fraternize with predators too much.
No, that's true.
Except for the bloody Republican Party.
And yet they seem to hate aliens.
Yeah, illegal aliens.
There we go. So this episode will be a little bit different in the sense that Richard is gonna MC the first 5 movies,
Alien movies, and you're gonna do the prequel movies.
The prequel.
I only did 4 movies, so
yeah, no, you're right. There's only 6. Yeah, no, true. Yeah. So, what are those 6 all up?
So
movies,
the 6
Richard?
movies all up are Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, that came out in 1979. Then you've got Aliens, which came out in 1986, directed by James Cameron. Alien 3, or Alien Cubed, in 1992. It is called Alien 3, but it's stylized as Alien Cubed.
Yeah.
And they came out in 1992, directed by David Fincher. And then Alien Resurrection came out in 1997, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. And then...
written by Joss Whedon, though. So if you did want to have those, 4 works from 4, somewhat influential nowadays.
I mean, Jean-Pierre Jeunet made Amelie.
There you go.
Yeah.
The similarities are brimming in Alien Resurrection.
And then, after the series laying somewhat dormant for a long time, Ridley Scott himself, after doing diddly squat for the Alien franchise in the meantime, did a prequel series, did a prequel film called Prometheus about where do we all come from? And then that was followed up by a sequel called Alien Covenant, which came out in 2017, also directed by Ridley Scott.
So when you said diddly squat, was that intended to rhyme with Ridley Scott?
Yes.
Ah, it's a bit slow on the uptake here.
Ridley Scott did diddly squat.
Wow, very good. I think this is quite the this is quite a big franchise. I think because not only because it has so many names attached to it, but it feels like a lot of the tropes we associate with franchises now come from this
The sequel
film.
goes to space.
The sequel goes.
They're in space in the second one.
Well, I mean,
you can't say they're not.
Aliens, famously being one of the few big budget sequels people consider to be on par or perhaps even better than the original. You've got a franchise which dips almost majestically, almost like a swan diving beneath the surface of the water for food. It majestically drops in quality before we get like one of a more modern franchise trope in a prequel series. It's got all the trimmings, and that's not even accounting for its crossover movies and the Predator movies, which we'll be covering. We'll do Predator.
We'll be covering with them when we get to them.
Do Predator next week, and then Alien vs Predator to end the series on. So we're not doing them in chronological release order because
both Alien and Predator had 2 movies released after the 2 Alien vs Predator movies.
Yeah, because when we did Freddy vs Jason...
3 movies for Predator.
Yeah, when we did Freddy vs Jason, it worked out really well that we could do Nightmare on Elm Street up to Freddy vs Jason, then Friday the 13th up to Freddy vs Jason, then Freddy vs Jason, and then the 2 remakes. Whereas I feel like the connection between the post-AVP movies of each franchise are more tied to the existing franchises themselves. And also, as I said before, I don't think...
It's our podcast, we can do what we want, so...
I don't think...
we don't have to explain it.
I don't think AVP is particularly canon, and I've never felt more at peace with ranking connected franchises separately than this one, because it doesn't feel like they're really that canon with each other.
Yeah, right on. Right on, dog.
Thank you.
All right, so the first film is called Alien. Came out in 1979. As I said, directed by Ridley Scott. What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes? I'll let you finish your little sip of Coke Zero Sugar there.
Thank you. I would guess it has probably like 88%.
Ooh, way off. 98%.
Okay. I'd argue I wasn't way off.
Couldn't be more wrong, AJ. Could not be more wrong. So, Alien was... it originally started... There was John Carpenter's first film is like a sci-fi horror comedy sort of thing. And one of the guys who worked on that sort of thought, why don't we actually just make it a horror? Like, why don't we have to... what if the aliens actually looked scary? And then, it was, pitched around, shopped around. It was said to be Jaws in space.
Nice.
And then after the success of Star Wars, 20th Century Fox, who were initially reluctant, sort of thought, oh, okay, well, people actually do like sci-fi, so let's move ahead with Alien. And then they released possibly one of the greatest teasers of all time for a film, and one of the greatest and most famous taglines for a film, which, as we all know, is "In space, no one can hear you scream,"
which joins the ranks of the Jaws taglines, which we discussed at length when we did the Jaws series, and I feel like this is a nice closer on that, where it's like, these are in the Valhalla of movie taglines. It's Jaws and Alien, or probably more Jaws 2 and Alien that are the
just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water.
Yeah, just when you thought it was go safe back in the water, and
this time it's personal.
And well, I was meaning the Alien one in space, no one can hear you scream, are the two that, because they maintained the setting of the respective films in their taglines, it means like they're endlessly parodied, and you can swap them around. In space, in water, no one can hear you scream, and just when you thought it was safe to go back in space, that should have been the Alien 3 tagline.
So what is Alien about?
It is about a big spaceship called the Nostromo, carrying a crew of, 8 people, I think. And they are a mining vessel, and they're on their way back to Earth when they receive a distress signal coming from what looks to be a relatively desolate, deserted planet. Some of them go down onto this planet to answer this distress signal, only to find an abandoned spaceship and a nest of eggs. And one of these eggs, which I've recently found out is a very funny word for foreigners to hear us say, it opens. Eggs. It opens and a creature jumps out onto one of the guy's faces. It injects something inside him. He gets back on board, and there's a lot of cum in this movie, whether literally amniotic fluid or just like a very interesting design choice for some of its for a very particular bit of lore.
We'll get to it.
And an alien. Little baby alien chest bursts out of this guy. It runs away, rapidly grows into like this terrifying creature, where it slowly kills off the cast one by one until only Sigourney Weaver is left.
Well, he kills off the characters they're playing in the film.
I thought the actors died.
A lot of them have.
Wow. And she survives. Her and the cat survive, and they get in an escape pod. But the alien's on the escape pod. You thought I was wrapping up the synopsis, but she ejects it out into space. Also worth noting is that Ian Holm plays a android named Ash, but you don't know he's an android till it's revealed later on in the film. When he goes haywire and they have to kill him, and android blood is pearlescent and white. Looks like something else, and shows up a lot in all of the movies. And this, you sort of learn that the company that they're working for, which is called Weyland-Yutani, they actually know about the alien, and the real mission was to bring a sample back. And that's revelation, while not resolved in this film, it hangs heavy over the entire franchise. Sort of very classily understated, if anything, in the first film.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people, always talk about, the Weyland-Yutani, and it's like this whole big thing, like. But I never really followed much of the Weyland-Yutani through line.
Yeah,
it's one of those things that, because it's a lot more subtle in parts than I think I thought it was.
Sure.
That you it wasn't. It's not as much as the forefront as I think it's been made out to be. In my years of consuming pop culture, because it's worth pointing out at this stage that across the next 3 weeks, as we cover Alien, Predator, and Alien versus Predator, the only film I've seen before this and that entire franchise of, what is it?
13.
6 Alien films, 5, and then 13 films. The only one I'd previously seen is Alien. I watched it probably 10, 12 years ago.
And you'd never heard of Weyland-Yutani?
No, I'd heard of Weyland-Yutani endlessly.
That's what you said, right.
But then you start watching the films, it's a smaller part of the films than I think I thought it was. What's your experience with this franchise? This movie.
This movie. I'd seen this one. I remember it was one that it was important lore for my parents' early relationship. I think they went to see it together or something like that. And so
if it wasn't for this movie, they might not have had you.
I don't think the timeline quite works out there. I wasn't born in 1980, but
well, they might not have.
They might not have. I thought you were saying my parents fucked while watching Alien, which is not true.
No, they fucked like multiple times after watching it.
Yeah, for sure, dude, for sure. And so, like, when I was like, one of the coolest things my parents ever did was like show me scary movies when I was a little bit too young for them, and I think that's good for a person.
They're trying to like get the fear of God into you.
So I think I would have seen Alien for the first time when I was maybe 11 or 12, and by that point, I feel like I was so desensitized by worse but more scary movies that I wasn't too.
I mean, to be fair, it's on Disney Plus, so how bad can it be?
How bad can it be? I don't know if I'd properly seen it again since then. I'm certainly very aware of it. You know, I know I've twice in the last 2 years, my flatmates have watched it, and I've gone out of the room out of fear that we'll one day roll Alien, which, funnily enough, I watched Predator for the first time in 15 years about 2 weeks ago. So it still happened. So still very aware of it. And you know, I'd seen Aliens as well. But yeah, that was. I think I'd seen Alien vs Predator, but we'll get to that next week.
Well, yeah, you get yourself, mate.
Yeah. So that's my experience. Is sort of, I understand it as an icon of the genre.
Now, you mentioned in there the talking of icons of the genre. You can't go past the Chessburster scene, which is, you know, considered one of the all-time great scenes in not only, you know, horror and action or horror sci-fi, but in film. And, you know, that pretty famously was shot just in one take, and the actors didn't know what was happening, so their reactions are genuine.
Oh, wow.
But did you know that that's not true?
I barely knew that was even true.
Yeah, so there's like this long-held myth that, you know, they didn't know what was going to happen, and then it burst through the thing, and they went, you know, and so their reactions are genuine. What actually happened was that it was filmed in 2 takes. There's not this famous 1-take myth. The first take, it didn't get through his shirt, or like so John Hurt is lying on the table and it bursts through his chest, but the way it's actually filmed is that he's under the table, you know, and then there's sitting under it, and then there's a fake body. It's a
seminal backyard filmmaking move.
Yeah, exactly. They do it in Friday the 13th as well. That's how when Kevin Bacon dies. But so he in the first take, it didn't burst through his shirt. And so that take is actually used in the film because Ridley Scott sort of thought, oh, wait, it actually makes it look more vicious if it's like trying to burst through rather than coming straight through. But the thing that the actors, you know, reactions were genuine is that I think they didn't know how much blood was going to be coming out. And so there is a little bit of like, oh shit, like there's more blood than I thought there was going to be. So there is truth to the thing that the actors didn't know what was happening, but it's not they didn't know it was a chestburster. It's in the script, like fucking John Hurt's character's not in the rest of the film. Like,
yeah. Nice.
So you mentioned as well the design of the characters and of the aliens specifically. So based on the works of
when did I mention that?
You did.
You've written down in your notes. AJ will mention this, so just call back to it.
No, you did.
Okay.
Did. So go back, listen to the tape, do that little thing you do. Goes.
I don't know when I would have said it. I can't.
When we were talking about cum.
I was talking about the android. How they look like cum.
Right. Well, I thought you were talking about that
the phallic imagery.
The phallic
and
imagery.
Vaginal imagery, yeah.
And vaginal imagery. Like, Alien is based around the 2 scariest things known to man, a penis and a vagina.
One far more scarier than the other, though, I would argue.
Which one are you more scared of?
Gentleman never tells, Richard.
Yeah, the H.R. Geiger as well, by the way, is the sort of the mastermind behind the
Geiger-esque,
the works.
Which does not refer to when something is vaguely radioactive. a Geiger counter actually beeps when it's near something that's like sort of vaginal in design.
So yeah, it is this thing that it's very intentional, you know, that it's this whole thing, and the whole film is about sex, really. It's the whole thing of what's the scariest thing that can happen to a man, that he gets fucking penetrated and pregnant. Yeah. You know, and so that's the whole facehugger thing. And you look at the facehugger, it's a big fucking vagina.
It's a big pussy.
And it, you know, clamps onto your face and then sticks this thing down your throat and impregnates you. And then, so it's, this vagina penetrating you, and then it gives birth to a giant fucking dick out of your stomach. So it's very sexual.
And I think as well, it's a really good way to ease in young film buffs into imagery, because you know the galaxy brain meme. how it's like small brain is lol, the alien looks like a penis. Bigger brain is like, no, it doesn't.
Lol, the other alien looks like a vagina.
No, I was gonna say that also works. I was gonna say the bigger brain is like, don't disrespect this incredible piece of art by saying it looks like a penis. But the galaxy brain is like, no, it does look like a penis, and that's what makes it a great piece of art. Because I remember growing up, I went through those phases. I maybe didn't clock that it's supposed to look like a penis initially.
Because the xenomorph, the proper alien, like, once it's evolved from the chestburster thing, the one that you picture when you think of the Alien franchise is a giant penis.
Yeah.
Like on its head. It's a giant phallic.
Yeah, and I think it's, so growing up, it was like, initially thinking it was funny that someone made a mistake here and now all the effects look like genitals, whereas then you realize, oh no, it's all very deliberate and very meticulous.
Genitals are scary.
Yeah. And I mean, you say it's about sex, and I'd say the first 4 films anyway, broadly are all about motherhood, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And sex is obviously a crucial
obviously
part.
most explicitly, like in the second one.
Yeah.
Or the fourth one.
Or the third one, even.
Yeah, the design of the aliens, like, there's like none of the promotional material had it. Even the Alan Dean Foster, who wrote the novelization, wasn't even allowed to see what the alien looked like before it. So if you read the book, it's like, she was being stalked by a creature that didn't look like a penis.
He's like, well, I can guess that it at least won't.
I can. Yeah, well, we can fucking cross this off the list. Yeah, I mean, what do you think of the film?
I mean, I think I respect it maybe slightly more than I love it. I think,
right, yeah, interesting.
I think,
like how you feel about like penises,
for sure,
and vaginas.
I respect it. It demands respect. I think there's like the two sides of how to think of it, because on the one hand you can say, oh, what a scrappy achievement in filmmaking. It's so cool to, the Chessburster Scene. You can tell if you know anything about basic filmmaking that it's John Hurt under the table and they've built this wonderful model, and that's very charming. But then on the other hand, I think curse me, throw me out into the vacuum of space for going here.
I'm going to.
But I think some of the stuff hasn't aged as well. You compare it to something like Jaws.
Earlocks open.
You compare it to something like Jaws, where they deliberately didn't show the shark, and I'm sure, and I think I've heard before that there are scenes cut from Alien because they felt they were showing too much of the alien. But even what little they do show of it, I'm not sure
it looks like a dick.
What? No, it's not in terms of what it looks like. What it looks like is great. I'm talking about how it moves.
Oh, is it, AJ?
Yeah, cool. I'm talking about how it moves.
Yeah, cool. Still
specifically, when the baby alien escapes from John Hurt's chest, it doesn't scurry away. It more looks like
so funny.
It more looks like they've put a puppet on a skateboard and then tossed the skateboard away. It looks really bad. And not in a way that you can that I could kind of forgive. I also think if this movie was made now, and this is a for better or worse statement, not a this would totally be better, because I'm wary of that. But
Emma Stone would play Ripley, and when the Chessburster Scene happens, she'd go, that happened.
No, I was going to say, I feel like the alien would move more shadow-like or snake-like. It'd be whereas now it's very clearly a very tall guy in a suit, sort of clomping around in this suit that he doesn't.
Oh, sorry.
Quite know how to wear. When what's the name of their captain? Who's the actor who plays their captain? He kind of looks like the dude from the Gift.
Harry Dean Stanton.
No. I want to talk about that scene though. He played Uncle Owen.
Joel Edgerton.
He looks like Joel Edgerton. He's another very famous actor. Read me the cast. Who plays the captain?
So you got Tom Skerritt.
Tom Skerritt.
That's him.
Yeah. When Tom Skerritt dies, it's when he's trying to track the alien in the air vents, and they're like, we can see it on the radar it's right up beside you. And it's a very scary scene. And then the reveal that it's there as he turns around and it's just the alien, the guy in the alien suit, and he does like jazz hands and then it cuts away. And it looks so stupid. I'm sorry. Like, I think so I guess there's two arguments for it. On the one hand, I think it looks stupid that he moves in such a recognizably human way. But then on the other hand, I wonder if that is more Geigerian, more Geiger-esque, to be like, I recognize the humanity of this, and yet...
Well, it's the Uncanny Valley thing, right?
Perhaps. I think...
That it's like, this moves like a human, but looks like a giant penis.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe, while the effects aren't as good in the sequels, I feel like maybe it moves better in the sequels, maybe. I don't know, I say that. I've played Alien Isolation, and it moves like it does in this one. And I was always like, that's really odd.
Press X to jazz hands.
You can't play as the alien. That'd be dope. The Harry Dean Stanton, his death scene, I think, is probably the scariest part in the film. He's the first crew member to die after John Hurt, and they're looking around for what they think is the tiny little baby alien. And he finds it's like shedded skin, and he's like, "What the hell is this?" And then
what the dang heck?
He's looking for the cat because the cat's gone missing, and they don't want the cat to interrupt their like motion detector. And he finds the cat, and then the cat starts hissing at something behind him, and you see like a tail move up, and it's all. I can imagine seeing that in 1979 at a very premature time for like legitimately scary horror effects. I can imagine that being like life-changing, that moment, you know. So that I think is the scariest scene, and probably one of my favorite scenes.
That's quite cool. I read a thing about how they got the cat to like back up and hiss, and it's like I think put a treat in front of like a board kind of thing and hid like a dog behind it. And so the cat was like approaching it, and then they lifted it up and so it saw the dog and went and freaked out.
That is cool.
Because cats famously hard to work with, but
yeah.
But boy, do I love them.
Boy, does Jones star in this film. Shine, I should say. Jones the cat, my namesake. I recently found out my flatmate's sister has a cat named Ripley after Alien, and I was like, there's a cat in Alien.
There's a cat in Alien.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the movie? Do you like it?
I do. Yeah. I think what's sort of the big conversation we're going to have is like Alien versus Aliens, because that's, I feel like the big thing. But yeah, I do like the film. It's good.
Okay. It's not great?
No, I think I'm the same as you, that it's like, it's still like not perfect.
But does that imperfection make it better, though? It's one of those situations.
Maybe.
It's like,
maybe. I mean, it's a very well-told story. It's very, like, super influential. And, it's great. I don't know. Yeah, it's...
One thing it reminded me of is Evil Dead. And for a very specific reason, and maybe not the reason you might immediately think. And it's because both Alien and Evil Dead are movies which the lead actor is the lead actor because of the sequels, but you could watch 3/4 of each movie and not know who the main character is intended to be, because both Bruce Campbell and Sigourney Weaver are like one of a dozen characters until they're the only one left. And if you watched Alien knowing nothing about the series, you wouldn't necessarily see Ripley as the lead for a lot of it.
It very sort of similar, because it almost has like a fourth act as well, which is it's just Ripley, And that's a good point, because I wonder as well that like, because also one thing that I was reading about what Ridley Scott said is that for your kind of like normal slasher horror films of the time, the cast is a lot older,
right?
And it kind of, it almost kind of adds, like, it makes it a little bit scarier, because, you have teens going out and getting into all sorts of stuff. So Sigourney Weaver is the youngest person in the cast at 28 in this film.
Wow.
The rest of the cast are like 30s, 40s, even 50s. And yeah, it's you get the sense more that these guys are just workers, the wrong place at the wrong time. Whereas, when it's like teens, they shouldn't go back to the lake, but they do because they love adventure and sex. It's like, no, these guys are they're there to do a job and they just get caught with this fucking shit.
And no one has sex in this movie either. So, except for, I guess, the face huggers.
Well, that's the thing. And like, I've seen this be referred to, and similar to actually Evil Dead, which I thought you might say, is that like, it's actually like, this is like a rape film in the same way as like I Spit on Your Grave or something like that. And obviously, Evil Dead has the same with the tree. But it's the same kind of thing. It's the same sort of like themes of, your body being invaded.
I remember when I saw The Last Duel last year, another Ridley Scott film, and I was talking to a film buff mate of mine, and I was talking to him about how, like, I was so surprised that of all the directors, all the elderly directors in the world, that like Ridley Scott could make a film which is so like expressly feminist in The Last Duel. Like it makes no excuses and is like definitely on the side of the female character. And because you get all these like famous people coming out now, and they'll reveal like these dicey opinions they hold about cancel culture and stuff. And I was just saying, like, it's cool that Ridley Scott, I guess, is not one of them. Like, he has other dumb views on millennials, but he's not like, and the guy I was talking to was like, well, I mean, look at Alien, look at, look at all these other things he's done where like they're all being like expressly from the female perspective in a world that like has pushed females to, out of the spotlight and degraded them. And I think without being preachy and without like explicitly being about it in the text, I think Alien does a great job of portraying a very real female fear. I would assume, not being a female, but yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, well, there's nothing women fear more than a giant penis.
That's probably true.
In my experience.
That's probably true. Wow. I like how that's like an insult and a compliment, both to like extreme degrees to yourself. Like you're saying, like, I have a giant penis, however,
it terrifies
women are fearful of
it. It's funny, like the idea of this. Yeah, we're talking about feminism and whatnot, but because the all the cast were all written the characters, were all written as men, but with the idea that like any of them could actually be women, and apparently it was down to Meryl Streep or Sigourney Weaver, but Meryl Streep was mourning the loss of her partner John Cazale.
Oh wow.
From The Godfather.
Imagine Meryl Streep taking what a different fucking career she'd have if she played Ripley. Holy shit.
But it is funny, and we talked about this during the week, that like incels and the kind of people that are angry that the Little Mermaid is black now, that there's a female Ghostbusters, that like all they have to like hang on to. I'm not sexist, I like Alien. Like that's all they have. And they're like, no, look, you like, the Ghostbusters are shit characters. No, it's possible to have good female characters. Look at Ripley. And that's and Sarah Connor as well, I guess, is the other one that they have. But yeah, it's funny that they more so, I guess, in some of the sequels, but the sequels all still deal with motherhood. But I mean, I guess if we're going across to Aliens, that's a very sort of like that, like hyper masculine kind of, gunning shit down, but still also, has the whole motherhood thing with Newt. But there was a lot of talk when Aliens came out about like Ramboette,
right?
that like her character, but it's like, it's. They're sort of one example of a good female character is still an action
30 years old as well, as in the movie's 30 years old. Well, 40 years old now. I think that in a vacuum, there's nothing wrong with a strong female character having like masculine attributes, but I think this incel argument falls apart when it's like, oh, okay, well, I also think like, this character from like the main character of something like The Devil Wears Prada is a great female character, and it's like
I really like that you like couldn't think of one.
No, I was trying to think of like
there's a great female characters who are feminine.
I mean, this is also part of the problem is that like the term strong female character, it doesn't apply to films which are maybe more subdued in nature, and like so there's nothing wrong with having like masculine quote unquote strong female characters, but it is funny. It's like after all these years in sales, after all these years, you're still pointing to the same two female characters who like have and like I bet their reasons for liking them are because they shoot guns and not because they're like incredible mother figures or like
oh yeah and like and it's don't worry, you're still in the first two at least. You get to see, or maybe even three, I can't remember. You get to see Ripley in like a very small singlet and her underwear.
And do you know in Alien they had to do some very early CGI work to mat out her pubes because Sigourney Weaver refused to shave, and there's like a DVD commentary or something from Ridley Scott where he's just real pissed off about it. Like, we spent weeks in post-production trying to remove her fucking bush because she refused to shave for us, which is like still a great feminist anecdote, I think.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So do you want to move on to Aliens?
Sure thing.
We keep in mind we are under a time crunch.
Yeah.
So
how long do we have? I thought you had. Do you have till 4 or do you have till after 4?
Well, I have a lot of stuff I need to do before I fly. I want to leave to the airport at 5.
Okay,
so I want to be done recording by 4.
Okay, we could try.
So
it's 2:30 now, folks, just for context.
So if we spend an hour and a half total talking about the next 5 films, that's why. So Aliens, there's a segment we sometimes forget to do called French Wise, which is, and fortunately
that segment
for
we
us,
sometimes forget to do.
Fortunately for us, there's actually a fun anecdote about this becoming a franchise.
Recite it for you off by heart. This is plastered all over IMDb and Wikipedia.
Yeah. So the theory goes, or the rumor goes, that while pitching this film, his pitch consisted entirely of James Cameron, consisted entirely of walking into a room, writing the word alien on a whiteboard, and then adding an S, and then changing that S into a $sign. And then they were so amazed with it, they greenlit the film. Now, that's not quite what happened, but someone last year asked James Cameron about it and asked if it was true, and he said, yes, it's true. It just popped into my mind at the moment. It was actually on the back of a script or some kind of presentation document. It might have been the treatment. I can't remember. I was sitting with the 3 producers. We were in the office of the then head of 20th Century Fox, and I said, guys, I've got an idea for the title. It goes like this, and he wrote Alien in large block letters and then put an S on the end. I showed it to them. I said, I want to call Aliens because we're not dealing with one, now we're dealing with an army. And that's the big distinction. It's very simple, very graphic, and I said, but here's what it's going to translate to, and then I draw 2 lines through it to make it a $sign. That was my pitch. Apparently it worked because they went with the title. They never questioned it. So he actually pitched the entire film. And this, oh my God, they were sold on it, was just for the title.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I am like French wise. I am like curious as to how does James Cameron get the job to do Alien 2?
Yeah, because when they started having these discussions, he had made one film, and that was Piranha 2.
Oh, had he not made Terminator yet?
He hadn't made Terminator yet, but by the time he was given the directing job, he had made Terminator, and that was what they said, okay,
right.
He made Terminator, but he got the sort of he got into the discussions because of his Rambo 2 script.
Oh.
As I was like for writing it.
Oh, right, yeah,
and
of course.
He also got signed on to direct it after the success of Terminator, and I think, that really sort of trusted them with make it like an action movie and stuff. But Aliens 1986, directed by James Cameron. What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes? The last one had 98, keep in mind.
Let's go 95.
This one also has 98.
No kidding. Interesting.
Yeah. So what's
that makes
this one
me
about?
so happy. This one is about So Ripley, at the end of the last film, she got in a freeze pod to fall asleep for however long. She gets picked up some 57 years later by the Bureau Federation of Human Space Travel or some shit. And they're not sure if they should believe her, because they're like, all we see is that you're the lone survivor of a ship carrying trillions of dollars of ore, that you have freely admitted to self-destructing yourself. And she finds out that there is a colony of humans on the planet where they found the alien, and they haven't been able to contact them for whatever reason. And so she's like, something's going down. So she is coaxed into joining a group of soldiers who go down to this planet to see what's going on. They indeed find that it's been ravaged by the aliens. They find a young 12-year-old girl named Newt, who Ripley takes under her arm and is essentially a surrogate mother for. All the characters, who I'll point out now, are like, what a fucking excellent cast of secondary characters this film has. And it makes every other film in the franchise look embarrassing by comparison. They all, everyone gets killed off one by one until it is just a few of them left, and Ripley has to fight the Queen Alien. And she kills all her eggs.
The Qualian.
There's a scene where Newt has been captured by the aliens and taken to the Queen, and Ripley, there's a time pressure and everything. The planet's about to be nuked. She goes to the nest and she's walking through all these eggs, and she looks up at the Queen, and the Queen, looks threateningly at her, and there's aliens from either side, and she points the flamethrower she's got at the eggs and looks up at the alien Queen, and the Queen sort of squawks, and the other aliens like back off because they're communicating, like, you do this, I'll blow up your eggs. And Richard, this passes the Bechdel test. This is two named female characters talking about something other than a man, communicating about something other than a man.
What if all those eggs were male, though?
Oh my god! Never mind. And they
never mind. This film is sexist.
And so she gets Newt back, and they blow up the planet and get back to their home base in the ship. But the alien queens followed them, and Ripley gets in a previously established mech suit, very classily done. We see it earlier in the film. We see that Ripley can drive it. It's like a quintessential Chekhov's gun scene, I think. Those mechs, and she says, "Get away from her, you bitch," which also passes the Bechdel test. And they fight, and the Queen Alien gets sucked out the what do you call it, the airlock. And then the survivors, who are Ripley, Newt, one of the soldiers, and a Hicks, and a android named Bishop, played by Lance Hendrickson. And he's been torn to pieces, but they get into the ship and go into hypersleep, ready for their next adventure to come next movie.
Which will probably involve one or more aliens.
Possibly cubed. We don't know at this stage.
So, the golden question, the $1 million question, the thing that everybody tuned in to the Cult Popture podcast this week to know, AJ, is Aliens better than Alien?
So I think that from a purely enjoyability, because everyone's always like, the first one's a horror, but the second one's more of an action film. And I think because of that, I think I prefer Aliens. I think it's just more fun. I think there's less the flaws I was nitpicking at with the first one, I don't think are present here. I think the aliens are scarier in this one, when they're crawling upside down on the roof and stuff, and I think that's all very terrifying. I think, Ridley Scott has probably got higher highs than James Cameron as a director, but I think that Aliens is probably better. That's my hot take. Depends what you want. Do you want meticulous horror or do you want meticulous action? And I think maybe meticulous horror is more well respected than meticulous action.
True.
Maybe they
I
shouldn't
mean,
be.
this very interestingly, this was a surprise to me. Sigourney Weaver was nominated for an Oscar for Aliens.
Really? I didn't know that at all. Wow.
And like, you know, the Academy doesn't tend to respect horror movies, sci-fi movies, or action movies.
Or sequels.
Or women. Or sequels, yeah. And yeah, so yeah, but reviews were kind of mixed at the time, but no matter what anyone had to say about the film, they praised the ever-living fuck out of Sigourney Weaver. And yeah, so my answer to the Alien versus Aliens debate, I think, having seen Alien before, like I feel like I need to watch Aliens again is kind of my answer to the question. That I think my initial response, like if like as soon as I'd finished Aliens, I would have said I think people probably forget how slow the first half of Aliens is, because like there's no aliens for like over an hour into the film, about an hour into the film, and I think I was expecting a balls to the wall, non-stop action film from this, and then not getting that. The first hour of the film, I was kind of like, "All right, where's this going?" And it's a slow build. And in an action film, you know, when you're expecting all this action, you don't want a slow build. But in a horror film, you do want a slow build. And so I can forgive more on first watch. I can forgive Alien being slower because it's building tension, whereas in Aliens, I'm like, get to the bang bang, you know.
I see, yeah.
And so yeah, I will say for now I prefer Alien, but that could change on a rewatch.
Nice. I love, as I said before, I love the secondary cast in this. I think Lance Hendrickson's great as Bishop. I think Bill Paxton is like, it's got such a legacy, his performance. This is the game over, man, game over, that like, and that line, not only that line but like that cadence of speaking, I feel like has like become a mainstay in the stock standard military character, like, or troop character. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess it's just a very familiar performance. I think my dad picked up a lot of this character in his personality, and would say things like "game over, man" all the time. And I think that's part of why it feels so iconic to me.
It's also like the "game over, man, game over" is like there's some like very early internet meme that used that sound.
Is there?
Yeah, like "you're the man now, dude," or like something like that. Used that piece of audio, and I think that really for our generation.
All
I mean,
all
it
your
doesn't
base
help
are
that
belong to us. Is it that? All your base are belong to us, man.
But yeah, I remember like a weird like website that, you know, the 404 page like was that. It was like there's something somewhere in the annals of internet history that that came to me. It's ad-libbed as well, that line.
Right. There you go. That's great. That's a great line, and I feel so sad that he's one of the many, many characters who meet their demise because he's so desperate to not die. It's really sad. But then also, like, I feel like if I was to pick any flaw with the film, I feel like Hudson, who's the character that Bill Paxton plays, his death is mostly off screen, and I feel like you've established such a like idiosyncratic character that he did, like, because like Vasquez and the dude, so you've got this very this butch woman. I say that because she
grew up with 18 brothers.
Yeah,
so
she's very much a tropey character as well, and sort of her there's another guy soldier who's, you know, quite chummy with her. They die in quite a heroic, like, sacrificial way where they blow each other up to destroy a bunch of aliens, whereas Hudson just gets dragged under the floorboards and you don't see him again. And I thought that was a shame. I feel like that character deserved a more heroic ending, I guess. And it's also because you've also got the suit that you know, betrays them in the end, which I thought was such a great character. And there's the moment where they're talking about you know, we got to get off this planet and we got to nuke it, and he's like, whoa, there's like trillions of dollars of worth of resources down here. And my flatmate was like, yes! Like, 'cause you just need these characters in movies like this. The Mayor in Jaws is another example, where it's like the capitalist bureaucrat like being like, no, we have to make the worst decisions because there's money involved. And I think it's so essential.
And you got to have them
like
in
this.
real life as well.
Yeah, you've got to. Do you think it's worth noting as well, like, into, you know, our podcast about franchises, this is our second James Cameron sequel. I mean, this is, in this case, he didn't direct the first one, but Terminator 2, I would comfortably say, is better than Terminator 1.
Oh yeah, Terminator 2 is better than 99% of movies. It's fucking awesome.
And I think
this is also our second franchise to feature a character named Newt and the actress Catherine Waterston.
Is it really? What are the others?
Well, Newt Scamander,
right.
and his love interest is Catherine Waterston.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize that was her. That's so funny.
Yeah, she's in Covenant.
Yeah. So the what was I going to say? I think usually when people talk about what makes a good sequel, I feel like it's it's the opposite of what a lot of people think. You know, there's go deeper, not bigger. There's like you got to do new things. You've got to do interesting things. But both James Cameron's revered sequels that are out at the moment, there's another one coming later on this year, which we'll have to see. But both Terminator 2 and Aliens are both examples of just flat out going bigger and just increasing. Like it's I think he's an interesting director when it comes to talking about sequels, because he seems to make all the dumb meathead decisions that usually result in terrible sequels, but he does them and they stick in the zeitgeist for 30 years, you know, like, and I wonder what he does that's different to other people who make
he's just a good director.
Do you think that's all it is? Is it the characters? Is it the
It's 100% the characters, like which is interesting, because I think the characters in Avatar are so famously unmemorable.
Yeah, true.
That we'll see how Avatar 2 goes.
Avatars.
But the
he could have called Terminator 2 Terminators. You can apply this to like any like 80s franchise.
Predators.
Yeah.
But it is funny that, because the Alien vs Predator was one of these ones that's talked about for a long time, and they sort of said, that's what we want to build towards. And I think there was at some point James Cameron was sort of asked to return to the franchise, and there was like, we're going to be building to an Alien vs Predator, and he was like, that's the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard. I want nothing to do with this franchise anymore.
I've written down.
And then, but then he's like, I actually quite liked Alien vs Predator.
Did he really?
Yeah. He admitted he quite liked it, but he's like, I still don't want to come back.
That's so funny. So I reckon, like, the Newt stuff, and is there a deleted scene, or is there an extended cut of this movie where it's revealed that Ripley had a daughter that has now grown up and died? Because I remember watching this movie before, and there's a scene which establishes that while she was in hypersleep, her daughter passed away. This provides an emotional context for why she's so attached to Newt. Because that there is because I kept waiting for that scene, but I guess the Disney Plus version doesn't have it. I think it adds a lot to the character.
So this is one that as well people asked us, like, which cut are you doing of each film? It's like whatever one's the one. Like, but there are extended cuts of and I think there was a box set released that sort of did like director's cuts of all the films except for the third one, because David Fincher's disowned the film. So there's an assembly cut, it's called, of that one. He said, oh, you can do it if you want to, but you can't call it a director's cut.
Nice. That's very telling when you get those box sets. That's like the director's cut, the assembly cut. It's just a premiere. It's just a premiere timeline.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, what else do you have to say about Aliens? It's interesting. This one continues that sort of theme of motherhood. I mean, it's most explicit in this one.
And I think there is, and I'm gonna sound like I'm like just pointing something out, or I'm trying to sound woke or whatever. But like, I think there is something that's really compelling to me about the climax between Ripley and the Queen, because it's two,
It's a cat fight.
it's two mothers, right?
Mm.
It's two mothers, and when you think about it, why is Ripley?
We haven't seen that kind of thing since Bad Moms.
Why is Ripley the one we're rooting for? I mean, like the alien queen is maybe just as like valid in her motivations. And out of the two queens who have died in my world in the last couple of weeks, I gotta say the alien queen is the one I feel the most sorry for. Because this is an example of like it really is just we identify with the human characters because they're human, like and
I mean, yeah, we need to get an alien on the podcast and ask whom they identified with in the film.
They'll be like, well, obviously the movie wants me to identify with the human characters because the alien characters are presented narratively as the villain, and that's actually more damaging to our representation than anything else.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about like the fact
or
that
they'd go
they'd just kill us? But what do you think of this thing that like the aliens and the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are like all female? That it's like it's almost kind of like a trope of this kind of thing, that it's like
sure, yeah,
the man versus creature. The creature tends to be female.
Well, I think in nature, the queen or the female, often for some reason, humans excluded, ends up being like the big heavyweight. You don't see that a lot in humans, but like,
whereas with humans, it's us.
Look at like bees, how they have a queen bee, and even or like the
yeah. I mean, I guess it is just like reflecting nature kind of thing. But and I think as well that we understand the maternal instinct of nature, and that it's one of the purest animal instincts is to like protect your children, and so it's probably something around that, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah, totally. I think that's got to be it. Is that it's a internal. It's a
shorthand.
But it's also like a touchstone between creatures, and you don't need to question why. And seemingly just a rampant animal is out after revenge. If you say, "Oh, it's the queen," and we saw Ripley blow up its eggs, it's like, well, I get it.
Shouldn't have blown up her eggs.
It's just like, yeah, let's fucking blow up the species, which is not very like nature conservationalist. It's not a very nature conservationalist message in this film, because it's like, yeah, let's nuke the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's maybe that's just what woke looks like in the future.
Blowing up animals that threaten us.
Because I mean, you were quite happy about the death of our queen.
That's true.
And now you're criticizing Ridley for wanting to kill a queen.
I guess I'm not a very good nature conservationalist either.
Interesting. I just think I'm just asking questions. I just think it's funny how you.
I don't care. That's the best one. Like, I don't have an opinion. I just think I think there's crazy on both sides.
I actually think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So now we're moving on to a little film called Alien 3, or stylized as Alien Cubed, and the hilariously the poster promises 3 times the suspense, 3 times the danger, and 3 times the terror, but then cubed isn't multiplying something by 3, so
there's also only one alien in it.
Yeah.
So. I guess 2, technically.
Well, I guess, we're actually the alien to them. So.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, Alien 3 had a pretty tumultuous production. There's a bunch of different scripts. If you watch the original teaser trailer, it's very similar to the trailer for the first film. And it says, in 1979, we discovered in space no one can hear you scream. In 1992, we'll discover on Earth everyone can hear you scream. Now, you might be thinking, It does feel very relevant to the film, and you're right, because it's not. That they don't go to Earth.
Also, shit turn of phrase. On Earth, everyone can hear you scream. Okay.
I can't.
Yep.
I can't hear everyone scream. But there's like a few different scripts, some of which have leaked online. William Gibson, Eric Red, and David Toohey all wrote scripts, but the sort of most famous unused one is William Gibson's script, which is
Is this the wooden ship one?
no, it's not actually.
Oh, there's one that was going to be set on a wooden ship.
Yeah. It's this one. Gibson mockingly subbed it up as space commies hijack alien eggs, big problem in mall world, but that's been adapted as like, it's adapted into a comic series in 2018. They also did an audiobook version of the script, and there's going to be there's a novel written. Or it says in 2029 we will see another adaptation of it. So I don't know if it actually happened, but yeah, as you mentioned, there's also William Gibson's Alien 3.
Oh wow!
And yeah, what you're referring to is Vincent Ward envisioned a planet whose interior was both wooden and archaic in design, where Luddite-like monks would take refuge. And it's that was another one that a lot of people sort of really liked. And then they ended up taking elements from various ones. Vincent Ward was replaced with David Fincher, who was a music video director at the time. This is his directorial debut, and he wanted Gary Oldman to star in the film, but they couldn't work it out. And then, so what is the film that we get about?
I feel like David Fincher directing this film was like a Mandela effect kind of thing, where it's like, I found out very late in life that David Fincher directed Alien 3. This one is about, so the ship that we last saw our main characters on, something goes wrong on it.
And of course it bloody does.
It ends up, the pod they're in crashes into the water surrounding a like deserted prison on this planet. The prison has 25 inmates who still live there because they converted to a religion that's somewhere between Christianity and space wizardry, and they decided not to leave. And there are 3 people who work as custodials at this prison that are not prisoners themselves, and the custodial characters, they dig up, well, they fish out, I should say, this escape pod to see who's survived. And guess what, everybody?
Oh, Newt survived.
It's just Ripley. She's the only survivor in what is one of the most coldest moves I think I've ever seen a sequel do. We're shown like a computer screen where it's like, subject, 12-year-old girl, deceased. And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. What the hell? It was one of the only things I knew about the movie going in. I remember years ago watching some kind of special feature, or maybe it was just like a TV documentary on the Alien franchise, and it went into Alien 3, and people were like, God, after all the themes of Aliens, to then just immediately kill off Newt was heartbreaking, and I don't think audiences recovered from that for the whole film. So I knew going into it that it was like this really controversial
I had no idea.
Wow, it must have been devastating.
I didn't really care. The Newt sucked.
So Ripley gets aboard and like, you know, learns that she, these inmates are not to be messed with, and you're coming to get picked up. And she's really trying to figure out what's happened to the ship, how it crashed. And what eventually transpires is that there was an alien or a facehugger that crept on board, and the inmate's dog gets attacked by this facehugger, and so now an alien dog hybrid is running around, and by the end of the film, a bunch of characters have died, and there's still a bunch left, ready to kill the alien. They concoct like a Home Alone-esque plan of how to trap it and kill it. But then Ripley discovers that she, in fact, also is pregnant with one of these aliens, and it ends after they kill the main alien. It ends with members of Weyland-Yutani showing up to try and take her back, but because she doesn't trust them and she thinks that they're just going to want to, do something with the alien, she nosedives, she backflips into a pool of molten metal. Nasty way to sacrifice yourself. And as she's falling, the chestburster bursts out, the alien bursts out of her chest, and she sort of maternally cradles it as they both fall into the molten metal, destroying the last alien that they would have access to.
But then don't worry, she sticks her thumb up and does a thumbs up out of the molten liquid. Oh, no, wait, I'm thinking of Terminator 2, which came out 1 year earlier. And apparently they originally envisioned it ending like that and then thought, we shouldn't do that because Terminator 2 just came out.
It still ends pretty close. Can't imagine how much closer you could have made it. I wrote this in my Letterboxd review for it, but one thing that really surprised me about this film is you literally have 25 nameless, faceless, identical characters, and yet the order in which characters are killed off is genuinely surprising. Because of the three so I think maybe 3 or 4 inmates get killed before they work out what's going on. When they work out what's going on, Charles Dance, who plays the basically the only good guy on the planet,
one of the good ones.
Him and Ripley hook up. He then gets killed. Then who I thought was like the main antagonist, who was the warden, gets killed. And then the one custodial left is like just the right-hand man of the warden, and he survives like quite far into the movie, along with like 80% of the remaining inmates. And I was like, what a strange way to do it. And you can say, it's cool that it's unpredictable, but I can't help feel like it would be a lot better if Charles Dance was around for that second act. Though that being said, actually no, I was going to say the opposite. The first half of this movie with Charles Dance I thought was more compelling than I was expecting, while the end drags on for quite a long time. Yeah, right. So the question of whether or not I liked it, I think it's I can definitely see some there's gold in them there hills. I think there's some really good ideas in it.
In a while.
I think that for what I thought was just an afterthought, a narratively irresponsible afterthought in killing Newt, it does take up like a lot of the movie's emotional space, and is pretty much based around Newt dying, which if you're going to kill off a character, I respect that a lot more, because then it's like, because it'd be very easy to just see it as like, wow, they wanted Ripley by herself, so they killed off all the fodder. But I don't think you could say it's that, because I think Newt's death like dramatically affects Ripley's character, and it also like plays into the continuing and ever-evolving theme of motherhood in these films, because when she dives into the molten metal at the end and the chestburster bursts out and she cradles it, I was like, okay, so they're clearly still going for something here. And it's almost like a inverse view of motherhood, because she's cradling her baby as she kills it. And it's almost like Ripley is like being maternal for planet Earth by killing this threat that this company wants to bring back, And so I guess I can't necessarily quite articulate it, but there is still some good thematic work being done there, and I think I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. However, there is a very funny line of dialogue that I actually Googled and found a Reddit thread based around it. Because someone was like, hey, this is the worst line of dialogue I've ever heard. Which is when it's towards the start of the third act, where Ripley is trying to basically inspire the prisoners to fight back against the alien, despite the fact that they're all like chicken, don't want to do it. And she's giving them like a motivational speech, and she says, I should preface this by saying, like, my flatmates and I have a joke where you, like, combine levels of swear words. So, like, you might be like, fucking heck, because it's like, heck is such a censored swear word. And this is an example of that, I think, where Ripley says, what she's talking to the soldiers about the rescue team that's coming to get her. She says, what makes you think they're going to care about a bunch of lifers who found God at the ass end of space? You really think they're going to let you interfere with their plans for this thing? they think we're crud. And they don't give a fuck about one friend of yours that's died. Not one. And it's so funny. They think we're crud, and they don't give a fuck. It's so funny. It's so funny. I thought it was so good.
Do you think that... Because it's interesting, this film, it improved apparently by an assembly cut, but do you think there's improvement in this film? I mean, there is enough good stuff there, right? But I think the assembly cut, by the sounds of it, just adds more in, which
the last thing I want.
Because the director's cut of Alien and Blade Runner are both shorter than the theatrical cut. Right, they add stuff in, but they take stuff out to accommodate for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, like, are you asking, like, basically, like, is there anything salvageable?
Is it rotten to the core, or is it?
I think it might be. It's not that bad, but I don't think... Were I tasked with making an Alien 3, I think the place this movie goes wrong is that it went, well, let's try get back to the horror of Alien instead of the action of Aliens. And it's like, maybe the better direction would have been to go in a different... trample into a new genre, whatever that may be. And because I don't think it's better than Alien, and if it's trying to be Alien, well, then what's the point? I think in direct contrast to Aliens as well, like the background characters in this are horrible. Like, there's Charles Dance is okay, but like one of the prisoners who becomes like a main character literally introduced himself as a rapist of women, and it's like, well, what do you want from me then? Like, how am I supposed to care that this character is in life-threatening situations? I guess Pete Postlethwaite, isn't it? Playing a pretty unremarkable role.
Yeah,
and there's also
our second bad sequel, to a classic film, to one of the greatest films ever made, starring Pete Postlethwaite, that came out in the 90s.
What do you think of this film All Up? Did you like it?
I think it's one of those classic. I think it was made out to be worse than it maybe is. Like, there is some stuff in there, like you say. There's some good stuff in there, but I was under the impression that 3 and 4 were, complete write-offs, absolute crud, essentially. And
we shouldn't give a fuck about them.
Yeah, but there is enough in there that I was somewhat entertained. The move to a CGI alien is interesting as well, and doesn't look very good. But yeah, it is also interesting. I've said many times that David Fincher is one of, if not my favorite director. But yeah, it's funny sort of trying to see the Fincherianness.
Trying to see Fincher in it. Yeah, I couldn't really see his
a little bit of the color grade. I noticed it's like grimy sort of color grade, but he's disowned the film completely and has turned down any invitations to recut it or anything like that. The assembly cut is based on an earlier cut of the film, so it is still his vision, I guess. But it's weird to think, this was his directorial debut, so it's like, how does he still have a career? But apparently it was Sigourney Weaver was very publicly and very angrily sided with David Fincher against 20th Century Fox, and one of the producers didn't respect the management at Fox, and he offered Fincher a new project a few years later, and that was Seven. So, and then the rest was history. But so it's like he had a couple of people who were like, no, this guy has something, but he was just fucked over. Because, normally they just go, well, that movie's a piece of shit. You'll never work in this town again.
Do you reckon the reason that so often the third film in a franchise is where it goes off the rails? Do you reckon it's because a franchise that gets 2 movies in while still being in good faith, studio interference becomes more of a thing? Because studios are like, well, now we've got an even bigger quality powder keg on our hands, so they interfere more, and that results in your alien cubes and the like.
It is crazy though, just like, I mean, there's dozens and dozens of less publicized stories of studio interference that worked out right. Because, I mean, totally. When a movie goes well, no one questions it. When a movie's bad, everyone goes, well, what happened? They go, fucking execs stepped on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a probably you messaged me about it, and I agreed, and individually, independently thought of this as well. There's a pretty crazy, impressive practical effect that happens in this movie. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's this guy's face is fucking like half blown off. But he's still like talking, but his face is like pulsating, and his eyeball is like pulsating, and it's
Bishop, who's the android played by Lance Hendrickson. Because he survived. They tossed him into the trash heap, but he's an android, so she brings him back, but he's all mangled. And yeah, it's like
the combination of like one half of his face is like clearly still him, and he's able to talk and have a conversation. The other half is like, completely disintegrated. But it's genuinely, I mean, look it up if you haven't seen it, but it's like probably genuinely one of the most astonishing practical effects I've ever seen in my life.
Well, because I think it's 100% an animatronic, and they've just provided Lance Hendrickson just provided voiceover for it. I don't think it's like a situation with John Hurt Chessburster where they've done half his face under and put him under the table. I think it's sold with the lip sync, the overdub.
Still though, it's fucking
but
amazing.
It does look cool, and what's better, any fakeness that you could detect is like, well, he's an android.
Damn.
Like he is a product. He is a machine. So that's, any glitches, maybe they're intentional. I thought that was awesome as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering. One other thing I'm wondering if you thought was awesome. Alien Resurrection.
Oh yeah,
it came out 5 years later. The shortest gap between Alien sequels. And 1997, directed by, as I said, by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who, as you know, directed Amelie as well. But what do you think this one has on Rotten Tomatoes?
What did Alien 3 have?
Oh yeah, what would you guess?
50.
46.
Yeah, okay. This one's got to be like 30%.
This one actually has 54%. It's higher.
Higher than Alien 3?
Like on almost every like a Metacritic, IMDb, like it's all higher.
Wow. I think I can maybe. I don't necessarily agree, but I got some idea for how it could wrangle that score.
Well, I think it's one of those things that, I mean, they're kind of on par in a way. They're like, this one commits some classic cardinal sins of like a resurrection film, or like that sort of stereotype of sequel. But I mean, Halloween Resurrection's a classic one. Mm-hmm. I think it's that thing of like Alien 3 was the first bad one, so people were like, fuck this garbage. And then by the time another bad one came out, they were like, oh, well, their memory of Alien 3 was this, catastrophic fall from grace. And then this one's like on par or maybe slightly better than the last one. And so they go, what?
Yeah, interesting.
What's it about?
Yeah. All right, so get ready for some bullshit plot mechanics. Mm-hmm. So 200 years later, on a ship, Ripley has been cloned.
What? That's bullshit.
Why? From blood samples that were taken off screen in Alien 3. Why is she cloned? Because
we want Sigourney Weaver in the fourth one.
Yeah, I think it might be because they cloned her, the version of her that was pregnant with the alien, and they want to get the alien back. Yeah. Isn't that insane? Isn't that such a leap to think that's how to do that?
Yeah.
That we need to clone, because when you clone something, you aren't cloning like the state it was in. You're growing like a genetic double, not like if Ripley had like
a hat on,
a hat on, or a haircut on. Is that going to come up in the clone as well? It's so funny. It's such a contrived way to get Ripley back, because, come on, you could probably just clone the alien. Anyway, she's also partially alien, or she has like acid blood now.
Yeah, well, because I presume it's supposed to be that like, by cloning her like that, they got part alien DNA and part, like a fly situation.
Yeah, and they remove the alien from her belly and use that to grow about 5. No, they say. I think they have 3 fully grown aliens towards the start of the film. And then a ship called the Betty docks. This ship was supposed to be a bunch of, was it scientists or something like that, or
some fucking nerds shit.
But it's been taken over by mercenaries who made a deal with this dodgy mothership to use its occupants as test subjects for the face hugger aliens they've got. And so all this happens. There's eventually, they say there's 12 aliens aboard the ship, and then they all break out, and Ripley, who's half alien, joins the crew, which consists of Ron Perlman, Tuco from Breaking Bad, and Winona Ryder, who ends up being an android. Your android reveal quota reached, and it's essentially them trying to get back to the Betty to escape. Back to Earth while the aliens are after them. At some point in the film, Ripley is I guess like, I always heard that she was raped by an alien in this, and she gives birth to an alien human hybrid. But the alien queen, she does like, she is shown in sort of an artistically vague way to be having sex with the alien, but then it's the alien queen who's pregnant with the hybrid, so I didn't quite get how that worked. And this has been called the newborn, and it births and immediately kills the queen, and is sort of the main villain for the last act of the film, which she eventually kills. And Richard, speaking of killing, I thought this movie killed. I thought no one ever told me how fucking hardcore Alien Resurrection is. This has got to be some of the most grisly, hammy violence I've ever seen. So let me paint the picture to people for how the newborn is eventually killed in the climax of the film.
Keeping in mind that the newborn looks like a fucking son of Godzilla. The newborn is hilarious looking. It's insane.
Yeah, it's like an alien body with like a human skull face, but it can portray emotion.
It's so funny.
Quite a saccharine way. So this alien, basically, Winona Ryder is being threatened by it, and Ripley goes and hugs it because she's its mother, and she cuts her hand, and then she splatters some acid blood on the window, which makes maybe like a 3-inch in diameter hole in the window, and she goes, "Hold on to something." She says that to Call, who's Winona Ryder's character, and then the newborn gets sucked up against this window, but because it's like 9 feet tall, its back is up against this 3-inch hole in the window, and then it cuts to outside the window, and you see this flap of skin flailing in the vacuum of space, and then that rips, and because that rips, it cuts to the front of the newborn, and its guts fall out its stomach, but then because of the vacuum, get immediately sucked back out the back. So they fall out, then immediately get sucked out, and eventually every bit of this alien gets sucked out this tiny hole until the only thing left is its skull, which crushes into 1,000 pieces as it also gets sucked out. And I was like, wow.
This is funny stuff.
I've never seen something like that in my life.
You actually have. There's a very similar death in Jason X.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess it's like, because I know that's, I guess...
like almost identical.
Well, it looked more graphic in this. And I guess like, because I remember hearing like a real story of like people in a submarine who like accidentally opened a plug hole sized suction thing, and it said they would have died before they even realized what they did wrong, because their entire being, sorry to be grisly and graphic, folks, but it sucked them out like a tiny hole before they even could have realized what was happening. And I've never seen, I know that's how it would work, especially in space, but I've never seen it portrayed. Well, apparently I have, but not as graphically.
Not the little skin flap.
The little skin flap
like a penis.
Was like, what the hell is I watching here? This is crazy. So I have somewhat of an affection for this movie, and I'll say this about the Alien franchise. I think I had a great time watching a lot of these. I think all of them gave me something to mull over. And the nicest thing I think I can say about Alien Resurrection is that if you took the first Alien, it is a combination of Alien and Aliens, I should say as well, because it's like trying to be both, like a horror and an action.
Heavy cake and eating it too.
Yeah. If you were to describe the horror of Alien 1 as being like elegant, it's very elegant told horror movie. This, take out elegance and replace it with cheesiness, and that's Alien Resurrection. And to the same heights with which Alien is an elegant horror movie, Alien Resurrection is a cheesy horror movie. It reminded me of Deep Blue Sea. Like, it's very, very similar to Deep Blue Sea.
It's very late 90s.
It's very late. It's this spin-off of the crew of a spaceship getting slowly killed off one by one genre. It's like a degrade of that. Like a downgrade of that genre, because now it's like there's a lot more revelry. It kind of reminded me less of The Mummy, but of Deep Impact, Stephen Sommers' other movie that's sort of like The Mummy. There's a scene where like the crew are traveling and they have to swim through like this flooded kitchen to get to the other side, and it's like these are the kinds of stories. This is maybe a very difficult thing to explain, but these are the kinds of stories that I used to like play out on the playground with my friends when I was a kid. We'd be like, we're on the playground. The playground's actually like a sunken ship, and we're trying to get out, and you have to swim through this bit. Like,
oh no, my little skin flaps.
My skin flaps. I mean, like the aliens chase them through the water. And it's not very scary, but it's kind of like tense. There's a great character who's in a wheelchair, and one of the other characters has to wear him on his back as they swim through, and they're climbing up this ladder, and the aliens are chasing them, and they have to like switch spaces to like shoot them, and it's all very like you could almost call them set pieces, but it's less like the set and more like scenario. And scenario pieces, interesting scenarios that the characters find themselves in. And I don't know, man, I was ready to just like absolutely hate on this and dogpile on it. I thought it was quite fun. I thought it's like it's not very good. I remember a year ago now, someone in the Discord was really frustrated with the fact that I seem to have no reverence for good bad movies. And someone asked me, are there any movies that I acknowledge are bad that I still like and that I don't secretly think are genius? Because there's movies where it's like, I just think people don't get it, and that's why people think it's bad. I think this is the kind of movie that I feel that for. Alien Resurrection, where it's like sort of very cartoony, very silly. There's a scene early on in this movie where Ripley throws a basketball from over her shoulder, and it goes through the hoop even though she's not looking, and you couldn't get a better scene to signpost saying, this is the bad one. Because it's like thinking like, because it's like, you think Ripley's badass, right? Well, here's a badass thing she does with a basketball. And it's like, this is fucking stupid. The original Ripley was this like quiet, understated character.
Never touched a basketball.
Never touched a basketball in her life. And it's just such a silly, gaudy way of being like, it's time to get badass. But yeah, I thought this is a lot of fun. Brad Dourif is also in this film.
Yeah, you love Brad Dourif.
I do love Brad Dourif.
It's interesting. So the before landing on Jean-Pierre Jeunet, there was I somewhat agree. I think I probably enjoyed it less than you, but I get where you're coming from. That there is golden in their hills, and I the newborn especially does. Anytime the newborn was on screen, I was like, this is fucking hilarious. So it's interesting because you have the Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher. There were a couple other directors spoken to for Alien Resurrection, and to me, these feel more like the perfect, like, completing that pattern. So, the producer's first choice to direct the film, who actually had a discussion with the directors, was Danny Boyle.
Cool. Would have been a better movie if it was Danny Boyle.
Yeah. Then you have, after The Usual Suspects, Bryan Singer was approached.
Not to give him too much praise. I think Bryan Singer probably has a very interesting perspective on something like Alien.
But Peter Jackson was also approached, but he said he could not get excited about an Alien film.
Fair enough. He's got Lord of the Rings to go into he's sorry, excuse him. He's about to become the third most richest director of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, excuse him. Give him a break.
Give him
Jesus.
a fucking break. How many times has Peter Jackson nearly directed a film in film franchise Fortnights?
It's insane.
He's
it's the pre Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson as
Yeah.
well, where they're like he's cheap but he makes like schlocky films.
James Bond, Hellraiser, like there's a couple of
That's the
others.
only two I remember. Yeah.
There are definitely more though that I can't quite
Yeah.
remember that he was attached to, or you know, in
approached,
talks.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like he must have just done an interview where they're like, "What films did you almost direct?" and he just listed a fuck ton, and
Yeah,
then
totally.
that's just become IMDb trivia.
Yeah, totally.
So there was, as you mentioned, it was written by Joss Whedon, who also wrote a script for Alien 5, which was never used. But yeah, his initial screenplay had a third act, which took place on Earth with the final battle for Earth itself. And then he wrote 5 versions of that, and none of it ended up in the film.
Because they arrive at Earth at the end of the film, and I do think it's interesting to have a franchise that's like so much of it is based around Earth, but this is the first time you actually see Earth in the whole series. I think, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also interesting who survives the movie as well. Ron Perlman in this movie is like, he's gonna die. This character, he's gonna die, and then he survives to the end.
I felt that in one of the other films was still weird to talk about.
So
as
did
well.
I. I can't wait to talk
Insane.
about it.
Insane.
Yeah.
And I know we both know who we're talking about, but Joss Whedon wasn't happy with the final film. His quote here, it says, "It wasn't a question of doing everything differently. Although they changed the ending, it was mostly a matter of doing everything wrong. They said the lines mostly, but they said them all wrong. And they cast it wrong. And they designed it wrong. And they scored it wrong. They did everything wrong that they could possibly do. There's actually a fascinating lesson in filmmaking because everything they did reflects back to the script or looks like something from the script. And people assumed that if I hated it, then they'd change the script. But it wasn't so much that they'd changed the script. It's just that they'd executed it in such a ghastly fashion as to render it almost unwatchable." Which is fascinating that, like, if he can watch it and be like, this is my script, but this is terrible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Because, yeah, there's, like, in X-Men, people always talk about the "what is Toad struck by lightning" line, and that's another thing where it's like, that was in his script, but supposedly delivered wrong.
Well, they removed earlier scenes,
to
which explained why she said it. There's also a scene in this film where Ripley finds a bunch of other failed Ripley clones, and one of them is like gasping for breath and is like, "Kill me," which I thought was that made me get existential, to be honest with you, because I was thinking about like that Ripley has had the same.
Would I ever be asked for death?
Well, that Kill Me Ripley has had the same experience as this. Like that Ripley has also lived the first 3 movies. Presumably, you know,
and still wants to die.
Yeah, and then the Ripley 8.
It's because she knows she doesn't want to be in the 4th one.
Ripley 8, who's the living one, kills her.
Yes, she did
by way of flamethrower. Which, if I was a failed clone of myself, and I saw a proper clone of myself come in, and I asked him to kill me, and then he pulled out a flamethrower, I'd be like, wait, can we do a different way? I can't think of a more miserable way to die than being flamethrowered to death. To being flamethrown.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, AJ, as far as I'm aware, that's the end of the entire Alien franchise. Unless, I don't know, do you have anything?
Yes, Richard, I do. I do have something, Richard. Because, guess what, everyone? Alien came back. We're, of course, talking... so when did this come out?
About 2012's Aliens Back.
Aliens Back. The final chapter.
The Aliens Back didn't fare too well in Alien Resurrection. It got sucked out a little hole.
I mean, it is probably worth noting that Alien vs. Predator did happen between these movies, but I do think the conversations around these franchises benefit from being separated in such a way.
Jam on.
Yeah. So how many years later? 15 years later, we came back with with Prometheus. So I'm just rearranging how my computer looks. So Ridley Scott returns to the franchise 15 years later in 2012 with a little film called Prometheus, Richard.
Mm.
We've never done it this way before, and it's completely thrown me. What do you think Prometheus has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I know it's fresh, but not super fresh.
Super fresh.
So yeah, it's like mid-70s.
Yeah, 73%. And can you tell me what Prometheus is about? What's the deal with Prometheus?
So tells the story of, it's like a group of, a ethnically diverse group of they're not even actually ethnically diverse group of people on a spaceship, but they're on a mission to find out the origins of humanity, to find out where we in fact came from. They're there for the Wayland Corp, which before it's become a mega corporation with Yutani. But Peter Wayland is a character in this film, bizarrely played by Guy Pearce. And
like horrible old man makeup. But I guess he's probably supposed to be like 130 or something, right? So
yeah, I do want to talk about Guy Pearce playing Peter Wayland, because I have a little story about that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they go on to find, and then it turns out that it's the alien planet, essentially.
Sort of. Yeah, so it's like there's these big puffy looking dudes that they call the engineers, which cave paintings indicate created humanity. And these engineers created a virus, which is basically what we now know as the alien. It's this, like, if you breathe it in, it gestates inside you and bursts out. And it doesn't quite look the same, because the alien we know...
It's like, they look like angsty teenage aliens. Well, when we see the one at the end of the film.
Yeah. It's like, it's supposed to be like, this is... I think because judging by how it reacts when it takes over the dog, it like replicates a lot of the attributes of the host. But they kind of look like squids, the things that come out of your chest in this one. And yeah, pretty much everyone fucking dies except for the two of the main characters. Shaw, who is this sort of this
Noomi
series,
Rapace.
Noomi Rapace, sort of this series Ripley, and a disheveled, now only head, David, who is
Michael Fassbender
as an android, who many would probably regard as like the best part of these movies. I think
I would,
he's sort of like the Charlie Swan of the Alien prequels.
Yeah.
What did you think of? There's probably a bunch of stuff we have explained, and what's really annoying is these are very lore-heavy movies, so I would probably recommend watching so we don't have to like fill you in on everything we're going to be talking about, because I might get too confused.
Yeah, it is interesting, because that's one of the things that going in that I was like, Prometheus is going to be fucking dense. And it's like, I don't have to follow the engineers and everything like that and understand exactly what happened with them, but I can still get on board with, and it's like, that 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, that it's like, you've sort of said before, that's like your threshold for like going to see a film, or like, thinking a film was worth your time.
Yeah, I think if you're dipping below 70, even though you're still technically fresh, I'm like, maybe I'll wait for it to come out on DVD.
Yeah, that like
on home video.
Prometheus, for being a franchise that I'm not super attached to, it's interesting, and I saw people say it's like, this is a good enough sci-fi film without being an alien film, and then Alien Covenant ties them together a lot more.
Yeah, I think like
I enjoyed it.
I'm partial to like humans out in space exploring a new planet. I think that's all very interesting. But like, I thought there was some really good stuff in this and some really bad stuff in this. And it fluctuates back and forth scene to scene. One example I've got is like, Shaw's boyfriend or husband is like one of the first people to die, and while she's like on the operating table after like fainting, David sort of reveals he's evil to her and reveals that he poisoned her husband. Or maybe he doesn't quite reveal that, but it's very much like he shows his hand. And I thought it was such a clunkily written scene, very heavy-handed, sort of like, it felt like, we need her to realize David's evil at this point. Let's do a couple passes of this scene, and that's it. And I was like, it was at that point in the movie where I was like, this is bad. And then she finds out she's pregnant somehow, and she's like, I want it out of me, and she runs and goes to this previously established Chekhov guns surgery pod, and has it remove the alien that's inside her. And I thought that scene rocked. And this is right after the scene where I was like, this is the worst part of the movie. I thought it rocked. I thought it was so cool and so gory and just there's blood everywhere. And it's very like... it's very visceral, and I thought it was. And then
it's like once it's removed, she's trapped in the pod. With
this thing. Fuck yeah, man! And then, like as I say, it fluctuates back and forth. There must be some incredible antibodies in the future, because she staples her belly up and she is good to go. She is dodging out of the ways of like falling buildings. She is like falling down stairs.
She's not dodging as well as she could have.
She's getting attacked by people for the rest of the movie, all while her stomach is like stapled, but like I guess still open. And so like this was. If we haven't said this already, this is written by Damon Lindelof, who is now a writer I very much respect the work of. But back in 2012, he was coming off the back of a very divisive six seasons of Lost, where he was one of the showrunners on. Which, in his defense, I think a lot of Lost was thrust upon him. I rewatched the series in the last year, and like. Looking at various YouTube videos about it, and you see him talking about it in special features where he's like, every week I wanted to quit Lost in season 1. But I think there's still a lot of like flaws as a storyteller that he seems to have overcome weirdly, like to such an extent that I now think he's great. But when this came out, it was like, God, Damon Lindelof wrote this? Okay.
Why does he keep getting work? And then he made The Leftovers right after this.
Yeah, right. And what is typical of Damon Lindelof as well is like a lot of stuff in this movie is really like over-explained, but then a lot of stuff is really under-explained. It's vintage Lindelof, because this is what was the problem with Lost as well. Like they laid the groundwork for too much stuff that they couldn't answer all these mysteries. But then if they did answer a mystery, it'd be like a character just standing there explaining it. It's like, oh well, this wasn't very compelling. And so like it's things like the film basically ends with the question: if the engineers made humanity, why? Because it ends with them stopping the last surviving engineer from going to Earth and destroying it. And so it ends with the question: why did they build us if they just wanted to destroy us? And the movie ends with, we're going to find that out. And it's like, just tell me. I want to know why. But it doesn't explain that. But then it'll explain, like, it's a pathogen they created. Like, it's very, like, blah, 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 blah kind of stuff. And it's so weird. And I think this is a surprisingly different prequel. And we've talked about prequels quite a few times, especially with all the prequel trilogies we've been doing lately. And this has...
Fuck's sake.
This has some very unique prequel flaws.
Yeah, unique-y preaky
flaws. Where it's like, I think its biggest sin is like, now Alien isn't just the simple story of a crew that got attacked by an alien. Now it's like this complex network of like...
Yeah, there's engineers I have to worry about. Oh.
Like, I guess that's it, right? It's like a lot of the stuff is more compelling when it's mysterious. And so that's sort of where I landed on it. A lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff. I thought a lot of the characters outside of Michael Fassbender's David, I thought a lot of them were pretty dumb. One of my least favorite characters in the film was Idris Elba, who plays the captain. He's got a southern accent, which is not an accent you hear Idris Elba do a lot these days. And his crew, which also includes Benedict Wong, is one of his like main crew members. And at the end of the film, him, Benedict Wong, and another guy are the three people left on the mothership, and they're watching the engineer's ship fly away, and they're told it's going to destroy Earth. And so they all very calmly...
They do a holdo maneuver.
They do a holdo maneuver, they do. They all very calmly sacrifice themselves. And I was like, I do not believe this. I do not believe these characters are the selfless. They've been portrayed as like scuzzy mercenary type, not actually mercenary, but you know, that type, like high job for hire, gun for hire kind of situations. I didn't believe that they would do something selfless like that. And I also found there's a scene where Charlize Theron, who is like the suit, she she walks into this room and Idris Elba's the only one in there, and he makes a pass at her, and then she's like, "My room, 10 minutes," and I was like, this is a deleted scene. Why is this still in the movie? This weird scene that establishes these two characters bang. It has no repercussions on the rest of the script. And like, if you don't see the sex scene, I don't know, why bother? Why bother setting it up? I guess like I don't understand the well, actually, I think it's because this scene happens when they've still got two guys that are trapped out in the temple they discovered, and they needed a reason why Idris Elba wouldn't be in the control room to communicate with them when they die. But like, they'd just shown him a scene earlier being very flippant about seeing something on the radar that they might need to be worried about. I don't know. It just felt very tacky and very horny, but also not horny enough for it to be interesting. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It's funny, like, so watching Aliens for the first time, I messaged you about how like it is. When you see like a scene you've seen out of context, or you finally hear a line that you've seen quoted everywhere, and it still has that like effect on you. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, you know. That I had the opposite of that with Prometheus. That I'd heard the two things I'd heard about Prometheus are run sideways, you dumb bitch, and don't take your fucking helmet off.
Yeah, right.
And then when they take their fucking helmets off, I was like, what do you... Don't take your helmet off.
Yeah.
And then in Alien Covenant, they don't even fucking wear helmets.
Alien Covenant, I think, is worse in the don't take your helmet off. At least they explain it in Alien and Prometheus. They go like...
Yeah, they're like, oh, you can breathe here. Like, yeah, let's just take our helmets off. But it's like... No, you don't know what kind of shit is in the air. Like,
well, no,
okay, yeah, the oxygen levels might be right, but don't fuck, like...
Is taking the helmet off even what goes wrong, though?
In
Prometheus?
Well, I mean, it is in Covenant.
Yeah, I don't know if it is in Prometheus.
But it's still a stupid idea to take off your fucking helmet.
Yeah, agreed. Other dumb character things in this, it's not very common to feature a Christian protagonist who explicitly states they're a creationist, is it? You wouldn't get that now. So Noomi Rapace's character, like, albeit she's a creationist that believes that aliens created her, not God. But I just thought it was strange to be like they explicitly say they don't believe in evolution in this film. And it's like, oh God, that's weird to have that be the main character. And I guess it plays into the themes, and this is an incredibly thematic movie. There's
themes all over the place.
A whole Wikipedia page dedicated to the themes. Prometheus, of course, being the guy that tried to take fire from the gods and show it to the humans. And there's, that's I feel like there's a version of this podcast in which I would have developed a 2.5 hour TED talk on the themes of Prometheus. But like, it's pretty standard Ridley Scott stuff. Ridley Scottian. Yeah.
It's funny.
What does it mean to be human? That sort of thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned TED Talks there. There's because another thing that I knew about
That was intentional. Because I know what you're going to say.
Do you know about the thing that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I did my research.
Because
You messaged me 3 hours ago and said, AJ, can you please do the research for Prometheus? And I did my research. I read the Wikipedia page.
So there was it's called a viral video. There's a viral video released ahead of Prometheus, which features Guy Pearce as Peter Wayland giving a TED Talk in 2023. And because Guy Pearce plays Peter Wayland in the film, who's like you said, like in his hundreds, and he's old man makeup. You never see Guy Pearce in the film and out of character. You see him in Alien Covenant though, but there's this TED Talk, and so I'd never seen Prometheus. Didn't really have any interest in seeing Prometheus.
Yeah, I'd never seen it either.
I must have watched that TED Talk 50 times.
Right, because you like Guy Pearce.
I haven't watched it in almost 10 years, but I could probably recite most of it for you.
What drew you to it so much?
I have no idea.
And then to never watch the movie, that it's an abject failure of viral marketing.
Have you watched it?
I think you've shown me it.
Yeah.
You have shown me it because I knew it was Guy Pearce when the old man appeared.
Right, yeah.
Who, by the way, does not. He looks like an old man. Have you ever met someone that old in real life? They are like. They can barely move. They don't sound very intelligible.
Yeah.
But he's like sort of bouncing around and like speaking very clearly. I was like, this is
It's weird.
very clearly. Like I
Yeah.
can believe that like he looks unrealistic because he's lived to an inhumanly old age. But like to be like, and he's still very sprightly.
He still sounds like Guy Pearce.
Yeah. Something happens to someone's voice when they're that old that I feel like a lot of movies don't account for when they have old man makeup involved.
Yes, because he sort of just sounds like this.
Yeah.
T.E. Lawrence.
Yeah.
That's how the speech starts.
Nice. We've been doing a lot of legacy/distant sequels lately. We've done Coming to America, Bad Boys 4 Live, Anchorman.
From me, 3 years.
The legend continues. But this one puts all those to shame. It comes out 33 years after Alien, only 15 years after Alien Resurrection, but I feel like it is decidedly more interesting in the first film than the fourth. Ridley Scott, though, had actually demonstrated interest in returning to the franchise as early as 2002.
What?
He was saying that he wanted to explore the origins of the space jockey, who's the ship they discover in the original Alien film that has the eggs on it. So this key element stayed, 10 years later, the movie Prometheus comes out, and that is what it's about. So it is pretty interesting that was, stayed
Well, one
there.
thing I think is really interesting about this as well is that like we went from this Ridley Scott started the franchise and then left it to now he's directed half the films in the franchise.
Yeah, totally. That's great. During development, Scott, even as we talked about before, Scott collaborated with James Cameron on a project. And so, I mean, that would be awesome if the two like heavyweights of this franchise made something together. But as you pointed out before, when Fox were like, "No, we're going to do Alien vs Predator," Cameron bowed out and said it would kill the validity of the franchise.
Yeah,
which I agree with him, even though apparently you said he likes them now. Over the next 10 years, the Untitled Alien project would stop and start. Different writers, even different directors came on board, and then Damon Lindelof was eventually given the job, and Fox said they would only greenlight it if Ridley Scott directed it, which is an interesting wrinkle in this process because that suggests to me he didn't actually want to. He wanted to get some other guy in, and they were like, no, we're only doing it if you do it. Which maybe explains some of its flaws, some of its weaknesses. I kind of don't like that he directed it. I think it besmirches his legacy a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
The original script was called Paradise, which was a reference to Paradise Lost, but it was changed to Prometheus because Scott thought that the Paradise Lost connection gave away too much plot, which is interesting because I don't know what Paradise Lost is about, but I do know what happens in the Prometheus story, which feels like it's also like a spoiler if you extrapolate it too much, right?
Yeah.
I understood the film's marketing up until watching it and reading about it as being pretty hush-hush on it being an actual tangible connection to Alien. And while press release comments were vague about this, like intentionally so, apparently the filmmakers did actually acknowledge it took place in the same universe as Alien well before its release. And, there's
I knew it was an Alien. I knew that, like, the last shot of the film was a xenomorph.
Right.
And... I knew that I've learnt that in the last 10 years, and I think I've looked up the shot online.
I'd seen the scene before, yeah.
Yeah, but but I think that it's like, that was a reveal, that it's like, it's actually that tied to Alien.
Yeah.
Was a reveal, but it was like, I think we knew going into it that it's like, it was a shared universe, it had the same sort of strands as Alien. But,
and I mean, the androids bleed semen in this as well, so that's a pretty distinct... distinct connection. But yeah, on writing a prequel, I thought this was interesting. Damon Lindelof said, if the ending to Prometheus is just going to be the room that John Hurt walks into that's full of alien eggs and alien, there's nothing interesting in that because we know where it's going to end. Good stories, you don't know where they're going to end. A true prequel should essentially precede the events of the original film, but be about something entirely different, feature different characters, have an entirely different theme, and although it takes place in that same world, this is really, really fucking interesting to me, because this is like a conversation topic we've talked about endlessly on the show,
Yeah.
like what makes a good prequel, and I've never seen like an actual bigwig address that question. And it's funny that in the conversation of good prequels, Prometheus doesn't really often come up either, when it's like seems to be the one where it took into consideration all the inherent flaws with doing a prequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like I don't know if I agree that it has to include those things, but it is interesting hearing those are the priorities of someone who wrote a prequel to a very famous thing. Yeah, James Cameron has seen Prometheus. This is what he had to say about it. I enjoyed Prometheus. I thought it was great. I thought it was Ridley returning to science fiction with gusto, with great tactical performance, beautiful photography, great native 3D. There might have been a few things that I would have done differently, but that's not the point. You could say that about any movie. However, despite his praise, he also said he thought it didn't add up logically. It's interesting that the guy who directed the, what you might say is the more meathead action-heavy version of the film is the one who's like, the canon's not right. And the last thing I wanted to say to ease us into Covenant is that Lindelof also said that the film, and this is related to what he said about prequels, said the film could run parallel to the Alien series, and that a sequel would be Prometheus 2, not Alien Covenant, for example.
Yeah. So what was the sequel?
So yeah, and sort of we are sort of talking about both prequels in one section here. But yeah, in 2017 we did get Alien Covenant, also directed by Ridley Scott. Do you know what this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Because I had no idea. I have no idea what the people thought of this movie.
It's like about 60, right?
65. So lower than Prometheus. I thought it was better than Prometheus.
Yeah, so did I. I quite liked Alien Covenant.
Yeah. What is it about?
So
11 years later?
Yeah, it's years later. There's a again, space crew, they're off to colonize a new planet. They've got a bunch of colonizers. Classic.
2,000 colonizers asleep on board.
Yeah, and so they're going to go to a new planet and just fuck like nobody's business. And then they get this like weird thematically important Take Me Home Country Roads, which was like one of what 3 films in 2017 that used it.
Was it really?
Yeah, I remember maybe at least 2. It was because it was in Kingsman Golden Circle as well. And I remember people being like, "Why is?" And then there was another John Denver movie year, like, yeah. And so it was like 2017 just went real hard on John Denver, but they go there and then they find the wreckage of the events of Prometheus, and the people breathe in the pathogen. Aliens get on board, and then we find they've got in their crew. They've got Walter, who is another. And the newer one of the David android, so he's also played by Michael Fassbender. Then they find the original David, and then he's evil and wants to just breed all the aliens. So he's essentially like the creator of the aliens, because it's like if we find out where aliens came from, it's like David's just been fucking breeding them. Also, I did just remind myself of just one fun quote from the first Alien movie when their big thing was like, how do we get the alien on board the ship? And it was like, well, what if the alien fucks him?
Is that
That's like literally one of the writers or something was like, what if the alien fucks him?
Oh, nice. I found a Letterboxd list called 2017 movies where John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads is used as a major plot point or set piece. It's by Jack Anderson Keane. It includes Alien Covenant, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and Logan Lucky.
Oh yes, that's right.
So essentially, they get intercepted by someone singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads," and it's Shaw who sent it. We later find out who, at the end of Prometheus, they went to find the home planet of the engineers, because the planet on Prometheus was not their home planet, and so they go down and explore, and they don't wear helmets. And they're like, where did all this wheat come from? Why is there wheat on an alien planet? 2 of the characters in 2 separate parties, because they split up, are infected by these spores, which essentially birth an alien within them. A bunch of fucking people die. It actually opens with a pod. One of the pods explodes, which has the main character's husband in it, who we'll get to later. And so like a lot of death in this movie. There's a lot of married couples that each of them lose a spouse in it.
But I guess it's like that makes sense if you want to send people to a planet to fuck.
It's actually a pretty good idea, I think. Fucking, I think it's a great idea. So
in theory, yeah.
While they're being attacked by these newly born aliens, David shows up and is like, "Follow me," and leads them to this sanctuary. But then, turns out he's been breeding them and he tries to kill them all. The ending is they manage to get the survivors back up onto the ship because Walter, who is also played by Michael Fassbender, is possibly defeats David. And then at the end, when they're going back into hyperspace after defeating another alien that got on board the ship, as happens in like 4 of these movies, is that they get back to safety only to find that one of them hitched a ride. And what was a really well executed way to show something I didn't really like in the movie, while she's in the pod, the main girl, who's played by the girl
Catherine Waterston.
Yeah, she asks Walter, will you help me build the log cabin that I told you about earlier in the movie? And he clearly doesn't know what she's talking about, and she realizes it's actually David. And then he presumably goes, she gets put to sleep, and he presumably goes to like infect the 2,000 colonizers.
Well, he splits up some face huggers,
and puts them in the
and puts
embryos.
them with the but like that scene where she realizes it's David, and like she's being locked in a cryopod, and being filled with like gas to put her to sleep as she makes the realization, and then can't get out in time. I thought that was like one of my favorite scenes in the franchise.
Totally. It's
so well done. And Michael Fassbender's so good. And that was like, just that bumped up Alien Covenant like a whole half a star for me. And because it's right at the end of the film, it ends on this really high note. And it made me really be like, fuck, Michael Fassbender's so good at these movies.
Yeah. I like this more than Prometheus, but I thought suffered from a lot of the same problems. Probably has higher highs.
Put a helmet on.
Put a helmet on, stupid characters, though I do love Billy Crudup, who's a main character in this film. Also, another Christian. Second film in a row where a Christian is a main character. And as I said before, we'll talk about this as well. So Catherine Waterston wakes up, and they wake up prematurely because a solar flare interrupts.
So they've got like their emergency personnel. To make repairs. To the ship.
But her husband's pod, who's actually the captain, implodes basically, and he's burnt alive inside before he even wakes up. And then later, she's watching, like a minute later, you see her watching like a video of her husband, and boo, it's James Franco. And this my Letterboxd review for the film was the James Franco cameo gave me a bigger jump scare than any of the aliens in the film. Also starring in this movie is Danny McBride, who, ladies and gentlemen, survives the film. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe you would cast Danny McBride in a Ridley Scott alien movie and then have him survive the film. That's who you cast, and you give like a really great death to, or you make him a really shitty character. But he's actually kind of like quite a sincere, nice character, and he goes through a lot. Like his wife gets killed. And he survives the film. It's crazy stuff.
So
it's mind-blowing. Such unpredictable deaths in the Alien series. So my problem with the David/Walter switcheroo, right, is that I agree it's excellent. It's an excellently pulled off scene, but like the off-screen switch that had to have happened, I feel like we needed to see, even in flashbacks, see it in some way. Because
I just assumed, I thought it was so obvious that was going to be the
so
twist.
Obvious,
I never questioned it.
It's painful how obvious it is and how long they draw it out for. But because
it's worth, like when it's revealed to her, that's also quote unquote the reveal to the audience.
Exactly. It reminded me of how we don't see Captain America return the Infinity Stones at the end of Endgame. How it's like, it's the scene which like I guess happens, but it sounds like there's so much. It's so interesting that it's kind
of
strange.
How does he return the Soul Stone?
Yeah. How do we see any of this? And in this scene, because Walter's lost a hand by this stage. And, like, they kind of have
Mm.
different hair color as well. So I guess I'm just wanting to know, like, the last thing you see is Walter's about to crush David's head with a rock, and you see David, like, slowly reaching for a knife. I just feel like the assimilation of Walter's personality is a bunch of very specific things that needed to happen. And so it kind of feels like we needed to see it. The other thing that annoys me about this, and about Walter and David in general, is, and this was pointed out to me by a friend, this is going to sound like some dumb IMDb trivia, but it was actually real life anecdote pointed out by a friend, is that the main android characters in all the movies are named Ash, Bishop, Call, David, and Walter, which gives us A, B, C, D, W. And I had no idea. And what a weird thing to do anyway. But, like, you could have called him Eric, Edgar, called him Walter.
It is that was intentional leading up to this point, and then but Walter was named after a producer I saw.
Right, because I'm like, the only one where it would be even used as a plot twist would be Call in Alien Resurrection. That's the only one that. Well, you start with Ash in Alien, but there's no pattern by that point. Then Bishop is just told you're an android straight up, and then so is David and Walter. So the only one where it's really a plot twist is Call. But it is interesting to me. It's maybe the only tangible connection that, like, Ridley Scott has even seen Alien Resurrection, is that he, like, well, maybe it was Damon Lindelof, but, like, that they kept up the pattern of the alphabet. I just think that's really weird and really interesting.
Yeah.
Did you know this was filmed in New Zealand?
I didn't until I pulled up the Wikipedia page to just, like, have it with me, and then I saw it's filmed in Milford Sound.
Milford Sound. I mean, it looks.
I had no idea. I have no recollection of them talking about filming it here. Now that I think back to it, the landscapes are very clearly New Zealand, but
where's Milford Sound?
Fiordland.
Where's that?
It's like west coast of, like, Otago.
How often is shit filmed in the South Island? God.
Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout.
True.
Yeah, quite often.
Need to get in on some of these international film productions.
Yeah. But it's Alien Covenant's so interesting to me because, like, it's Ridley Scott making an Alien film, and now, like, having watched the series and understanding all this, and that, like, the original creator returning and making, like, with the same moniker as his original film, and it underperformed. Like, no one really cares about it.
Like, and we'll talk about this when we talk about titles, but it's like, it's an insane titling scheme that they did, presumably for branding reasons, that also still underperformed. Yeah, I agree. And I think, Ridley Scott has a history of bad, like, both Blade Runners have been poorly performed, and now they're getting a TV show. So this was originally announced in September of 2015 to be titled Alien Paradise Lost.
I remember that, yeah.
I guess they thought that would give too much away, so they changed it to Alien Covenant 2 months later in November. Yeah. The weirdest thing I thought is that Prometheus basically invites, like, a straightforward sequel. Like, Shaw is like, right, we're going to find the engineers.
Yeah.
And it didn't even need to end that way. It's just, that's how it ends. And it's like, okay, well, I guess we're getting a sequel. But then Alien Covenant is such a backdoor approach to answering those questions when it could have very just easily been the adventures of Shaw and David. And that might have been kind of cool. I mean, she does briefly appear. Yeah, the head of David. That does briefly appear in it when it's revealed that he actually, like, tested the alien out on her. And look, the final note I've got here on Alien Covenant is that prequel trilogies are, like, all the rage at the moment, despite never living up to the originals. But I gotta say, I feel like I can fill in the rest of the blanks myself. Like, I don't think there needs to be a third Alien prequel. I think during the time that they're in hypersleep, David, pretending to be Walter, plants enough, either whether he's putting just facehugger embryos or even facehuggers on the 2,000 colonists.
He's got the time.
It's like, then they land on the planet, and that's how the alien species is born,
Yeah.
However, is that the end is the question, because it feels like it's not.
Yeah, so when we're talking about continuing the franchise here, it's like, fucking hell. This is one of the densest ones we've had. Do you want to do a quick talk about titles before we... Because I feel like continue the franchise is when we start to end the episode.
Yeah, and we've got to do a meeting of the elders as well at some point. Yeah, so we talk about titles a lot on this podcast, and all I'll say on Alien 3 for now is that it, obviously it pisses me off to no end that there is no Alien 2, and then you've got one called Alien 3. I wish they'd called it Alien Prison or something like
Cubed or something like that.
Yeah, Alien Cubed.
Well, because they're kept inside cubes, because they're prisoners.
Very good. I think... before watching these, I was like, God, I wish they called it Alien Prometheus. How frustrating that they didn't call it Alien Prometheus, and they just called it Prometheus, and then the explicit sequel to Prometheus is using another series' moniker. Bananas to me. But having watched them, I now think that it should be Prometheus and then Covenant. And they should have just called them that, and, you can call the next one whatever creepy biblical word or whatever you want, or mythological word.
Job.
It's just called Job. And yeah, because
Alien Methuselah.
Well, they're both Prometheus and Covenant are the names of the ships, so presumably you call the next one the name of the ship. But yeah, I don't know. I think
Alien Nostromo.
I think Nostromo would be a cool title, and probably one that would do well for the Alien branding. I guess, I just think Covenant is not a very, like, Alien, giving it Alien Covenant is like so strange to me, and so like you got to pick one. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm downplaying how frustrated I am to save time.
Oh, thank you. So Media of the Elders, this is a segment where you can send us along your thoughts.
Yeah, if you pay us, if you donate to the Cult Elders tier at patreon.com/cultpopture, you can tell us your thoughts in a little secret Discord server, or a little secret Discord channel, where we discuss your thoughts. What have we got from the elders today?
So Bliss My Chessburster, everyone's got fun alien names this week, says, what a classic sci-fi franchise, having a badass female protagonist who battles face-hugging aliens, travels to their home planet to eradicate the species and the queen before ultimately becoming a hybrid version of the alien is surely something worth celebrating. Way ahead of its time. Great Scott. Ridley Scott, that is. Great Scott. Ridley's orchestration of the events and the designs of the ancient creatures are some of my favourite evers. The classic curvature and Geigery designs create a first-class work of engineering extravaganza. I haven't gotten around to the prequels, and I know that there's an entry or two that's particularly controversial and disliked. I don't know if I'll ever get to them. I would recommend them. And then they've also gone on to say Metroid is such a great series. That's not to suggest Alien ripped off Metroid. It's totally the other way around, and not a heathen. Rather, I thought it'd be fun to curb that expectation and bring that up because it's quite fun. Also recommend checking out the screen tests of the original costumes for the Alien. Creepy as hell. Cheeseburster has said the only Alien movie I'd watched before this year was Resurrection. Insanely.
Yes.
I'd only remembered the swimming aliens, which would have been cool with better CGI, and instead just looked silly. I watched the entire franchise over the summer in like a week. The first is an incredible sci-fi horror, probably the best sci-fi horror ever made. It's slow, but you get to know the characters immediately, and they all feel real. Yeah, I'd agree with that. They complain about their jobs, their pay, and they joke around. The dialogue, writing, and acting is top-notch and has layers. The android doesn't just let the men back in because he disagrees with Ripley, but because this was his whole mission, as you find out later. Is the Alien franchise anti-capitalist?
Yes.
The Chessburster
Most
Scene...
of them are. Most franchises and artists, I think, are.
The Chessburster Scene stands the test of time. It's frenetic and terrifying. The aesthetic of grimy, gritty, retro sci-fi is so cool, and something the newer Alien movies unfortunately dropped. Aliens blew me away, as I didn't really think a sequel would equal the greatness of the first, but it did. Cranking up the action, and the number of aliens is so simple but so smart. More aliens, more characters, more action. It fucking rules. The cast is again so good. Alien 3 was surprisingly decent. I don't like how they just get rid of the kid. It's clear they just wanted Ripley to be alone, but I don't think that was necessary. It makes the whole plot to save the kid from the previous movie worthless. I'll come back to this. The action was decent. The other characters mostly meh, but the story worked for me. The cast, writing, and acting is not as good as the previous two, but I enjoyed it. It's better than its reputation for sure. Alien Resurrection was bad. Also interesting to note, no colon in Alien Resurrection, but there is one in Alien Covenant. I could not get into it. The writing seemed bad. The story was awful. I hate how this franchise treats Ripley, just ignoring everything from previous movies other than Ripley's a badass. The plot is kind of a confusing mess. Swimming aliens is a good idea, but it didn't look great. Even Winona was meh. Prometheus and Covenant are so different that I thought they were interesting, but ultimately boring. Didn't really care for the characters. Story was okay, but scientists making really stupid decisions. Let's take our helmets off on this alien world that we've been on for 5 minutes. The aliens looked really cool, but we went from gritty, grimy, mechanical sci-fi to really slick, curved, metallic, clean, etc. It loses the character of the first films, and not for a good reason, in my opinion.
Nice.
I don't think we needed prequels. We didn't really need to show this shit, this crud. So many prequels are just trying too hard to explain everything, but when we really just want to see interesting characters face terrifying monsters and struggle to survive. I will admit, maybe I was getting tired of alien movies, but at this point, but still.
Totally.
I would rewatch 1, 2, and 3 and probably any day of the week, but would never revisit the rest. That's interesting that they lump in 3 with the first 2. I would say, I mean, it makes sense narratively that the prequels are cleaner because they take place beforehand. So,
right.
I mean, before they get all dirtied up.
Right.
Vinny Cubed said, Alien Isolation is so fucking good. The movies are alright. We'll get to Alien Isolation in a second when we talk about continue the franchise, but thank you for your input, Vincent. Dan from LV426 said, hope I'm not too late. Gotta say, super excited about this episode. What a fascinating franchise that's been both consistent and wildly inconsistent at the same time. Big fan of the first 3. Resurrection makes me so tired to even think about with all the inane creative choices throughout. Prometheus, I think people are way too CinemaSins about. That's a good way of putting it. And Covenant, I have no opinion. I have no option whatsoever besides Michael Fassbender being the best part of those 2.
Nice.
Maybe it was supposed to be opinion. Got a link of haiku too to round out my L segment. This is Dan's haiku for Alien. 4 stars. A slow burn first act. Fire the Foley artist. At least Jones survived. Yes. And then for Alien Covenant, 2.5 stars. Hey, Straight Man McBride, Xenomorph is too well lit. Fassbender carries. And then their old review. Thief of Attention. Wait, Danny McBride isn't the comic relief? Thief of Quality with scenes like the Record.
Yeah, the light.
I might have to click on that to get more of that review. Scenes like the Recorder, there are too many superfluous and self-indulgent scenes. On top of all that, the alien is shown too often and too well lit. Yeah. I fear the special effects will not age well. Thief of My Heart, Michael Fassbender's performances throughout.
It's a good point about the alien. I remember reading that at the time, people being like, why is it out in broad daylight? It doesn't look as scary. That's a really good point. And
then they've clarified as well. For the above, please only read the haiku at the top. Well, I did not do that, Dan. Should have put that up top.
Put up top.
So Foley artist, their comment on Fire the Foley artist. This was when I saw it in theaters, and the sound editing made me so angry. I'm not exactly sure why. It just didn't fit the room / atmosphere something would be in. I have many notes for that Foley artist, and then we've got one more. Paul Hill says, Prometheus is an interesting sci-fi concept that didn't need to be an alien film. I love the idea of humanity going out to the stars to find their creator and being rejected. Yep, that's on paper, that's a good log line. The alien part of the plot doesn't seem necessary. Covenant, on the other hand, does a much better job of being an alien film. However, it comes at the expense of many of the plot lines from Prometheus. I'd love to see a third part in this series about David's experiments in God complex while tracking the engineers. Also, is there another main character who suffers a worse inter-movie fate than Shaw? That's a good point.
True. Yeah, she gets dissected and experimented on.
Yeah, pretty fucked.
A meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned, and now it's time to talk about continuations of the franchise. There's so fucking many. So, some that didn't go ahead. Yeah, Joss Whedon had written a Earth set script for Alien 5. You mentioned there about the whole James Cameron thing, so I can skip that, and the 2002 stuff, which is great. In 2014, Sigourney Weaver said that she'd be interested in returning to the role of Ripley, saying, had we done a 5th one, I don't doubt that her humanity would have prevailed. I do feel like there is more story to tell. I feel a longing from fans for the story to be finished. I can imagine a situation where we finish telling the story. She said, I don't think Alien belongs on Earth popping out of a haystack, which is where I was afraid it was going to go. I feel it should take place in the far reaches of the universe where no one in their right mind would go. There are very few filmmakers that I can think of that I would entrust this to. In 2017, it was the Fox was rumored to be reassessing the state of the franchise after lukewarm reception to Covenant, although there's never been an official statement. And then, according to Collider.com, there's going to be one more prequel film before a soft reboot consisting of a new series with new original characters, new setting, everything. In 2019 CinemaCon, Walt Disney Company, now having acquired Fox, it was officially confirmed that future Alien films were in development. In 2019, there was Ridley Scott was once again attached to serve as director for a third prequel film, which was said to be in the script phase. He said in 2020 that work on is ongoing, but it was undecided with keeping it tied into the plot set out in Prometheus and Covenant. Sigourney Weaver expressed her interest in returning to the role with Neil Blomkamp's story, which was the whole thing that he was doing an Alien film and then not doing an Alien film, which was reportedly titled Alien Awakening, which would tie into the first two films taking place after Aliens and was going to involve Newt and everything, but they cancelled that in favor of Ridley Scott's own third prequel, which is reportedly titled Alien Awakening.
Yeah, so this Neil Blomkamp thing, this was such a big deal at the time because everyone was like, oh my god, what a great director to cast for an Alien film, which, you know, despite my reservations around most of his work, I think if you could tap into his District 9 self, I think that's a great director to attach to a third, because this was going to be a ignore everything after 2, we're starting again sequel, which this is the kind of franchise that has that treatment done to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did still see that someday. And we split off and have different timelines of Alien. So I still hold out hope for the Blomkamp version.
Yeah, well, we are getting one, which was confirmed in March 2022, that there's going to be going to Hulu. Much like Prey, there's going to be a new film directed by the Feet himself, Fede Alvarez.
The Feet!
Which is going to be produced by Ridley Scott. Apparently, Alvarez pitched the idea to Ridley Scott years ago and now has the opportunity to make it.
Do we know anything else about it? Do we know anything else about it?
Not really, but if they're going with the Predator Prey titling scheme, what should they call it?
A local.
Yeah, nice. There's also...
Thank you, AJ. You just named my Continue the Franchise.
There's an upcoming television series by Noah Hawley.
Yes.
Which is going to be on FX or FX on Hulu with Noah Hawley and developed by Ridley Scott. So that's like kind of where the actual live action sort of stuff is at. But then...
Much like the chest of John Hurt, it seems like the alien is about to burst through into a more consumable entertainment.
Aliens, and there's a bunch of Alien comics, and in comics, Aliens has versed Batman, Superman, Wildcats, Green Lantern, and Judge Dredd in separate comic runs. There's a movie called, I don't know if you came across this, Alien 2 on Earth. So this was made in 1980, and it was made before the Alien was trademarked.
Right.
So they're just like, fuck, let's make a movie that's called Alien 2.
That is
and then
hilarious.
there's some games as well. Aliens Colonial Marines, which is garbage, right? Like, that's the one that's
that's the one that just came out?
No, it's Aliens Colonial Marines was must have been 2012, something like around the same time as Prometheus.
A very similarly titled game just came out in the last year.
The Fire Team Elite?
Maybe. Literally, it might not actually be out yet, I'm not sure.
Oh, right, yeah. Because the others, I remember Aliens Colonial Marines just being a garbage, one of the worst games ever made. But then Alien Isolation, that's supposed to be really good, right?
Yeah, it is Fire Team Elite. Yeah, that I was thinking of. Alien Isolation is too scary. You'd hate it, Richard. It's so hard to play. It's basically it's basically Alien in video game form. It's got a really nice aesthetic of being it feels very VHS-y in its aesthetic, much like how the original ship felt. It's not set on, I don't think it's set on the Nostromo. I think it's set on a different thing, and there's only one alien. But what does suck about it is that for some reason you're Ripley's niece or something. I don't know why that's needed. It feels so stupid to make it that. We've played it as a flat a few times, but no one wants to play it anymore because it's too scary.
Nice. So, continue the franchise. This segment now where we each can pitch our own continuation of the franchise. And Ajay, what do you have?
All right, so I'm going to pitch a video game similar to Alien Isolation. Here's my thinking. It's called... So one of the problems I've always had with the titling scheme of the movies is that you go Alien, Aliens. You've changed the title fundamentally. You can't go back to Alien 3 now, right? And I've always... I jokingly once said the title should be Aliened. Like, add a different suffix to the end of the word alien.
Right, yeah, you just got aliened.
Yeah, you just got aliened. But what I'm going to pitch you is a video game called Alienation. And it'll be in the same font, so that's how we'll know it's about Alien.
Right, yeah.
And what we're going to do, similar to when the Ghostbusters PS3 game came out, we're going to say, this is Chapter 3. This is Part 3. And because it's a video game, we get Sigourney Weaver back, you get Hicks, you get Newt, everyone, so you can overwrite them dying in Alien 3. And it is about they arrive. I haven't got the full plot worked out, but basically it's going to be I want it to, maybe it shouldn't be first person, maybe it's going to be more something like The Last of Us or Uncharted, like a third person shooter sort of thing. But I do want it to involve setting up camp somewhere on a planet or maybe a spaceship, where they eventually have to go out and eradicate aliens or face aliens. And it will end with the final level in the game will be wait, before we get to that, there's customization options. You can dress up Ripley, who you play as like all the different versions we see throughout the series. You can get cool, I love shit like that. And
then PC modders will make it nude.
Yeah, absolutely. Very un-PC, if you ask me. But the last level is going to take place on what I guess, if we're taking Prometheus into account, would be the planet in Covenant. I guess that's their birthplace. They go there. And what the final chapter of the game will reveal is called Alien Nation. So it's Alienation, and they go to Alien Nation.
Nice, yeah.
And
I didn't pick up that that it was called Alienation. I thought it was called Alien Nation.
No, it's called Alienation, and it'll be very scary. I reckon it'll be I want it to combine the horror of Alien with the action of Aliens, and you get Sigourney Weaver to voice Ripley, and it's going to be it's going to be the definitive third chapter. Let's get some people who know the series and know what they're talking about on board to give it to give it to like deal with it with taste and with class. I think maybe a lot of the creators are maybe too close to it to make like Ridley Scott is like obsessed with wanting to give it answers, but it's like, well, what if we just tell a story that is effective in all these different ways, and like picks up on and elaborates on the themes, and this is all like what I wanted to do and not me actually proving these things. But I like the idea of calling it Alienation. I think people would be attracted to that because it's such a famous name, Alien, now, that I think people would figure it out. And then it has that double meaning that you go to the Alien Nation at the end.
Nice. Sounds like fun.
Maybe you play as an alien in it. Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Fuck, maybe these parallel stories where you also play as an alien.
Yeah. My continued franchise is like, I'm sorry, Sigourney Weaver. I want to see an alien on Earth.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I want to see from this franchise. But it has to be like in the 1980s or something. You have to go. It has to go through a wormhole, and if you need it explained, get a piece of paper, fold it in half, pop that pen right through, and and I want to see an alien on Earth. Just one alien. I think we don't need more than that on Earth. But I mean, it'll probably impregnate people.
Well, you could call it Alien on Earth, and then what you do is for the second one, you write Alien on Earth, and then you go back to where it says Alien, and you put a little S and then a dollar sign. Aliens on Earth, and then Aliens on Earths, where it crosses over the multiverse into parallel Earths.
Yeah. That's
once the xenomorph breaks the multiverse, it's over.
Yeah. So there's a segment now that we have to do called Rank That Franchise, where we've got a rank list of you on letterboxd.com/cultpopture/list/FFF-ranking. You can see our ranking of all the franchises we've covered. And where are we going to put Alien, AJ?
So,
it's the 160th franchise we've added. I'm going to put it somewhere near the top.
Yeah, I think I had such a good time watching these, and like the bad ones are fun, which is something you can't say for like Terminator, and the
so okayish
ones. I think. Well, where's Terminator's at 17? I mean, I'd probably comfortably put Aliens above the Muppets behind the MCU, as like I think to consider it has a good sequel, which is like a massive leg up for a
but also
franchise.
According to Rotten Tomatoes, like the two bad ones are still like over 40%.
Totally,
which is more than a lot of franchises.
And it's got a prequel series which is at worst interesting. You know, like, so I think this is one of the best franchises we've ever watched, and I wasn't expecting that going into it, and I just had a really fun time. Maybe I had different kinds of fun for different reasons watching them, but I just had such a fun time watching them, and I don't think Predator or Alien vs Predator is going to hold up to the same scrutiny. But I mean, I think Alien and Aliens are probably two of the best films we've watched for the podcast. So,
yeah, nice. Well, that's our episode on Aliens.
That's Aliens, everybody, and tune in next week for our Predator episode. That which will include Predator 2. The tagline for Predator 2 is like, "Guess who's in town?" or something. Like that. Then Predators, The Predator, and Prey, and then after that we'll do Alien vs Predator and Aliens vs Predator Requiem. And yeah, stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting Cult Popture at all the places. You can like us on Instagram and Twitter. You can join the Discord, which there is a link to in the show notes. And if you want, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cult Popture, where you get to do all sorts of things like suggest which movies we watch. The whole reason we're doing AVP is because it was suggested on and voted on Patreon, and you also get to contribute to something called the post-credit scene, which will be coming up right after this music ends. Richard, when we're not recording, no one can hear us scream. This should be on the Cult Popture drinking game bingo card, as like AJ tries to come up with a franchise-appropriate send-off at the end.
Sign off,
I feel like I always do that. I'm only just realising now that I always do that. Maybe I'm going to attempt to do that intentionally now.
Nice, yeah. Welcome along to the post-credit scene.
Welcome along to the post-credit scene. This is a segment at the end of each episode where if you donate $5 or more over at patreon.com/cultpopture, you get to give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene. Richard, what is it and who's it from?
Today's one comes to us from Greg Bucold, who says, "What do you think are some of the best post-credit scenes in film? How should they be used for maximum impact? Comedic scenes after a tense ending, foreshadowing the sequel, wrapping up loose ends, etc."
I think either do a low-risk joke or something that's genuinely like intriguing. Anything in like, and I mean the MCU runs the gamut on this, but like, yeah, you got to know what you're backing, what you're teasing when you tease it.
Yeah, I mean, for example, of what are some of the best post-credit scenes in films? It's always going to be hard to go past the original Avengers one, Iron Man.
Yeah.
That it's like, introducing us to the world of post-credit scenes. That's still the joke people make when it's like stayed at the end of the credits because Nick Fury is going to show up and say Elvis needs to join, whatever.
It's the quintessential post-credit scene.
Yeah, it's the platonic ideal of a post-credit scene.
Yeah,
and I mean that was unreal.
Which can be contrasted with the worst post-credit scene, which would probably be something like Morbius, where it's a bunch of people who with half the rights of what they're trying to tease, and even less an idea of what they're trying to do. So yeah, that'd be my answer for the best one. But I mean, like things like what is it? Iron Man 3 ending with Bruce Banner falling asleep to Tony telling him the story. Like that's fun as well. Yeah.
True to that kind of thing.
Yeah. One I didn't like was the Civil War one where Spider-Man's like shining a Spider-Man symbol on the roof because it was just what does that mean?
Yeah. Spider-Man will return.
You can't get past, fine, I'll do it myself. Maybe the
Hate
fourth kind where it's just like absolute nonsense.
that.